39 though. I'm like, wait. We're going to call to order the Narragansett Town Council regular meeting. The time is 7 p.m. and it is April 3rd, 2023. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next we'll move on to announcements and presentations. We will be giving, I will be reading the proclamation for Ms. Jane Colombo, a library employee of 50 years. Very proud of her. And in the words of Mark Twain, if you find a job you love, you will never work a day in your life. And Jane is one of those fortunate individuals who's found that. And I actually thought I was attending a retirement party a week or so ago, only to find that it was just celebrating her 50 years of commitment and contributions to the library. So I was very pleased that she'll be continuing with another chapter. So at this time, because we have provided her and given her the proclamation, I'm just going to read it aloud, and just a big welcome from her family and fan club out there. So this is a proclamation recognizing Jane Colombo. Whereas Jane has served and been employed at the Narragansett Town Library for 50 years, and whereas Jane has been an extremely valuable member of the Narragansett Town staff at the library, assisting so many children, families, residents, and visitors of the Narragansett Library, and whereas Jane focused on children and youth literacy, Jane has been instrumental in building an outstanding children's collection, and whereas Jane's participation and commitment to building children's books clubs for the children and youth of our community has always been a goal of hers at the Narragansett Library, and whereas Jane has provided her extensive knowledge and expertise in children's programs, and whereas Jane has been a true asset to the Narragansett Library over the years, and we appreciate her commitment to the job she loves so much. Now, therefore, we, the Town Council of the Town of Narragansett, do hereby extend our sincere appreciation and thanks to Jane Colombo for her distinguished service to the community, and highly commend her for the manner in which she carried out her duties and responsibilities. Signed and sealed this 20th day of March 2023. So with that, let's give Jane a big round of applause and thank her for Okay. Thank you. And at this time, thank you for everyone for coming out for Jane and supporting her. But I'd also like to change gears, and I would like to have a moment of silence for Mr. Richard Nassa, who passed away on March 29th. Mr. Nassa was a member of the Conservation Commission and the Tree Board, and he was a valued member of the commission and will be missed. Also, I'd like to add that Kevin Mulholland passed away on the 25th of March. As we know, he was the owner of Pure Fuel Company. He was a past president of the Narragansett Chamber of Commerce, and he was a very active Narragansett Lions Club member who I've had the honor of serving with at the food tent at the Blessing of the Fleet events. So at this time. Thank you. I'd actually, if Ms. Colombo would like to say a few words, I don't know. Okay, I can't see. No. Okay. Well, we just want to say we appreciate you, thank you, and obviously witnessed by everyone that came out to support you. You're very well loved, and thank you for everything you do for the town and the library, so thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on to the town manager's report.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome this evening for those of you watching at home, those who are here, and members of the council. At Town Hall, we've been experiencing some phone issues for people who may have called in and not been able to get anyone to answer. Off and on, we've had this problem for the last couple of weeks. It's working now. The emergency lines, the 911, police, fire, and emergency are not affected at all. They are working now, the regular service in Town Hall. We're dealing with Verizon and Carousel, our vendor, right now to try to find the root of the problem and to get it permanently corrected. There are two bills, there's a House bill and a Senate bill that are pending right now up in Providence. At the request of the council, a resolution was passed. House Bill 5597, which was read and passed by the House on March 29th, and Senate Bill 0302 is scheduled for a hearing and consideration tomorrow evening, April 4th. Both of these bills, the companion bills, were to give the town the authority to, when there's a piece of abandoned property, that would give the town the right to sell that at the market rate if the town owns it, if they choose to, if the elected body chooses to sell it at a market rate as opposed to just leaving it in the town, on the town rolls, or selling it to someone to go onto the tax rolls. But I'll keep you updated when they're both passed and signed into law. The Narragansett Community Choice Aggregation Electricity Program. The deadline to opt out has been extended to April 8th from April 3rd. All the information about this can be found on the town's website. As many people know, there were two public sessions held at the community center and also a presentation to another presentation to the council on the last meeting. So if anyone has any questions, I suggest you first look at the website, and if you still have any questions, just give me a call. Part-time code enforcement officer has informed us that he will be retiring. We just did hire a part-time code enforcement officer to replace another retired member, and we have someone in line to replace Mr. Green, who will be leaving shortly. The wastewater. The Narragansett Wastewater Treatment Facility has been selected as a winner of the Rhode Island Clean Water Association's Platinum Award for complete permit compliance for 2022. They do a great job over there, and they've received awards every year. And John's crew is great over there, and Scott Goodinson, who leads a shop over there with his crew, they do a great job. The water quality recommendation study from PAR Engineering. We expect to have the final report to the town in June, and we plan to promptly proceed with the recommendations. We'll bring them before the council as soon as possible. An update on the Narrow River concessionaire bid. The town re-advertised the Narrow River concessionaire bid. That, if you recall, that was the bid that originally went out for the concessionaire, but for the kayaks. We had no one bid for it. The minimum bid was $32,000 that was required. The prior vendor had it at $32,500, so it was $32,000 was the minimum bid. We received no bids, and we invited other vendors to apply. We've expanded the venues for publishing, like the Projo, and the whole idea is to get more responses. We did the same thing with the housing study when we received no responses to that. So the deadline on that, I think it's 2 weeks from Friday, I believe. I don't have the exact date in front of me. And the trust settled a lawsuit with the town, that Blanchette versus the town of Narragansett, involving the police department and an SRO who was simply doing his job. The trust did settle with a settlement where the town admits no fault. It was internally investigated by the Office of Professional Standards. They met with the Rhode Island State Police, the Rhode Island Attorney General, and the Rhode Island Department of Education. The officer didn't violate any policies, procedures, or laws, But the trust, once it's in the hands of the trust, they make a calculated decision based on the cost that could be incurred. The town admitted no fault for it. And that's it for tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tierney. And next up, we have a 20-minute presentation. I think we'll make it in time for the public hearing that's scheduled at 7:30. We may have to cut it short and come back if we don't. So I don't know if you're ready to go, Caleb. And this is the Narragansett Solar and EV charging analysis presentation. The vendor could not be here in person, so we were sent this video. Any questions that the council may have should be forwarded to vendor. Thank you.
Hi, this is Edward Galvin with the Cadmus Group, and today I'm going to be walking through the results from our solar and electric vehicle charging feasibility report at the new Narragansett Library. So I'm going to be giving an introduction to the Efficient Buildings Fund, which is a program through the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, as well as the Cadmus Group, who I am with. Then going through a technical overview of solar and EV charging, and lastly going through the results of our feasibility analysis at the Narragansett Library for solar and EV charging. So the Efficient Buildings Fund, EBF, is a loan program through the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank that allows public and quasi-public entities in Rhode Island to apply for low-interest loans related to energy measures. So those could be energy efficiency, renewable energy, EV charging, and energy storage. The benefits of the program is that projects are cash flow positive, so energy savings exceed the debt services for the loans on an annual basis. They allow applicants to save money on their utility bills. The EBF loans are typically below market, so they've, on average, I think, been 1/3 below market interest rates. They allow for flexibility in terms of the loan duration, so up to 20 years. And then obviously there's some environmental benefits in terms of reducing energy consumption or encouraging additional renewable energy consumption. And then we have a case study listed here for a large loan at the East Providence new high school a few years back. So introducing the Cadmus Group, who I'm with. I'm a senior analyst on Cadmus's distributed energy resources team and have focused lots on solar and energy storage in the Northeast. So Cadmus has been providing energy technical assistance since 2009. We've worked with lots of municipalities and state agencies, especially in the Northeast, with a focus on solar. And we've supported the Efficient Buildings Fund for quite a few years now and have assisted over 20 communities in achieving energy savings. So jumping into a solar technical overview, we're going to focus on solar photovoltaics, which is the solar technology that's most common today. You'd see it on residential roofs, commercial roofs, large ground mount applications. So this is the type of solar technology that captures sunlight directly and turns it into electricity. Some other common use cases are solar thermal, which capture it and then would produce hot water. But we're focusing on solar PV, photovoltaics. So generally the solar is captured, turned into electricity, and then that is fed often for commercial applications like we're looking at here, behind the meter. So any solar that's produced in real time during the day can offset the electricity that's used in the building. And then for any excess solar that's produced, so solar produced more than the instantaneous demand on site, then that excess is sent back to the utility grid. Any solar that's produced that's less than the instantaneous usage at the building would offset what it can and then the remainder would be supported by the grid. And you can see here, there's an example image of a solar project on a flat roof, so it's got some additional mounting. And then here's a diagram of just how solar typically relates to the grid. So there's a couple additional pieces of equipment here. So solar produces electricity. It's combined in this combiner box, converted to AC power, which is what most appliances use, through the inverter. Then the voltage is changed in a transformer, and then it's ultimately, goes to the meter, so it's measured and then sent back to the utility grid in this diagram. Some key considerations for solar installation. So location and the roof infrastructure. We want to locate solar where it gets the maximum sunlight exposure. Typically in the northern hemisphere, south-facing roofs are the best, and you want a roof condition that's strong enough to support solar. And additionally, it's always good when your on-site usage is similar to the electricity that's produced by the solar, just so you're not sending too much back to the grid, since oftentimes there's like lower compensation rates for the electricity sent back to the grid. Another key consideration is the cost of installation. Solar prices have been going pretty sharply down in the past decade. There's also available rebates to help reduce the upfront installation cost, and loan programs like the EBF. And then the other key consideration is the grid interconnection. So utilities vary their interconnection policies and processes. Sometimes there's fees, sometimes there's upgrades required to the local electric distribution system in order to take the additional power. And these timelines can really vary based on the conditions of the local grid. And then there's a couple different ownership pathways to enabling solar. So we've broken it down here to third-party owned and then own and operate. And this own and operate would be the town itself would purchase the system outright and then operate it. So there's pros and cons to each of these ownership pathways. And you can see we've got a few of them broken down here in this matrix. I'm not going to go through every single line, but generally speaking, the third-party owned system has been, or pathway has been pretty popular because it requires often no money down from the host customer's perspective, and the host customer would be, whoever's on the electricity bill. So Narragansett in this situation. So no money down, and then you would pay for the system as you go, essentially. So there's a couple different structures. You could pay on the amount of electricity that's produced, and typically that is set up as a discount to your current power prices. So like a 10% or 15% discount. So say like your electricity bill price was 10 cents per kilowatt hour, they'd give you a discount and charge you 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So you get that 1 cent per kilowatt hour savings as an example. There's typically a 15 to 20 year commitment period. Provides you a bit of or like less price volatility relative to utility rates, since you have somewhat of, or it can be a fixed price or it could be a set discount, like I'd mentioned. But I think the key con with this third-party owned pathway is more of the benefits financially flow to the installer and owner of the system. So that's one consideration. And then the own and operate pathway, you have to put up the full amount of the solar cost, but with the Efficient Buildings Fund, that's something that could be covered by that program. So you wouldn't have to put up any upfront capital from the town. The other considerations are the operations and maintenance and decommissioning. This is something that you could contract with your solar installer or find another solar company to take care of that through a separate contract. So not a huge hurdle as long as you can establish a contract with an O&M provider. Term commitment, you buy it outright, so you get the benefits for as long as the project operates. Most panels have a warranty of 20 to 25 years, but we expect the actual project lifetime to be over 25, so 25 to 30 years. And with the own and operate system, you generally receive the most financial benefit. So the town would get all of the incentives to install the system and then get all of the savings from the your electricity bill. And then a quick overview of EV charging. So typically today, there's about 3 types of EV chargers on the market. Level 1, level 2, and then the DC fast charge, which is also referred to as level 3. Level 1 is the type of charger that could plug into a standard outlet at your home. But the drawback is it's a very slow charge time. So you get at 3 to 5 miles per hour. This can take over 24 hours to fully recharge like a standard electric vehicle on the market. Level 2, which is what we explored for the library, requires a higher voltage plug. So like the type of plug that you'd install for like a laundry appliance. So it can be 208 or 240. It charges quite a bit faster, so 12 to 60 miles per hour. So I think this would take about 6 to 8 hours to recharge to 100% like a standard electric vehicle today. And then there's a DC fast charger as well, which uses a lot of power and can recharge like a typical EV on the market today in about 45 minutes to an hour. And the costs are they're somewhat exponential. So a level 1 charger, you don't need to upgrade the outlet; it's pretty cheap. Level 2 is a bit more expensive, including the electrical infrastructure upgrade, and then a DC fast charger can get quite pricey in the range of like $50,000 all in to install. So some considerations for installing public chargers. We've got a photo here of the general footprint of a level 2 charger. So it's not super intensive in terms of taking up land. But a couple things, chargers compete with general parking. Oftentimes when you're installing an EV charger, you might want to consider holding that or the parking space next to it to be specific to EV chargers. This comes with some additional monitoring considerations for if a gas car parks there. Do you want to ticket them or have that towed? You can have some signage kind of noting the restriction. And then with each charger, there's an option for if you want 1 port, as we've got pictured here, or 2 ports per charger. So we've actually modeled a single charger with 2 ports, so you could charge 2 electric vehicles from the 1 charger. The power rating. So with level 2 chargers, you'll typically see power between 5 kilowatts and 10 kilowatts. I think that's all generally sufficient, and I'd expect most cars coming to use this proposed charger would be just kind of topping off, not expecting a full charge, sitting there for 6 to 8 hours. And then the ownership and maintenance, which I think is an important consideration of the charger. So oftentimes this isn't really considered in the planning, and it leads to chargers being out of operation for quite a while, which can lead to some angry EV owners. But it's important to think through, whether you all want to take the lead on that and coordinating with like O&M providers as necessary, or you could have a third party responsible for the like ownership and maintenance of the charger. And then in terms of payment, you could offer free charging as a benefit to EV chargers for like the environmental attributes, or you could charge according to the usage. So, how much they're charging, they would pay like per kilowatt hour or based on the amount of time they're charging for. We see this one being more and more common as there's more electric vehicle chargers on the roads today. And we did include a estimate of like the total price, like expected max of an annual EV charger if you did want to cover the free charging. And I think that was about $6,000. So just wanted to put that out there as an estimate. Then diving into the specific model we did for the Narragansett Library. So we did a preliminary solar design. You can see the blue rectangles in this image here represent solar panels on the roof. So we took a Google Maps image and then used a tool called Helioscope to get a general estimate of how much power the roof could support. And we came to an estimate of 74 kilowatts, which is, a decent amount. A typical residential system is about 8 to 10. So this is, 8 times the size of a residential installation. We'd expect it would produce 101,000 kilowatt hours in year one and cost about $221,000 to install. And again, this is a ballpark estimate. We tried to accommodate existing, we call them keep outs, so like materials on the roof that, wouldn't allow solar modules to be installed there. We did use a conservative estimate of the panel technology. So I think with those things combined, you could see a higher kW amount. And then in terms of additional incentives, so there's a few we listed here. The first is the federal investment tax credit, which is a 30% tax credit that covers most solar installation costs, but not necessarily all. But it's a huge help in terms of driving down the cost. And with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, they actually enabled the credit to be payable via grant for nonprofits and municipalities that are tax exempt. So now these types of projects can qualify for the 30% credit. If you were to pursue the third-party owned model, then the installer would be the one that would be monetizing that credit. And then in Rhode Island, there's 2 solar-specific incentive programs, the Renewable Energy Fund and the Renewable Energy Growth Program. They're exclusive, so you can choose one or the other, but not both. The Renewable Energy Fund is a one-time grant payment, whereas the Renewable Energy Growth Program is a performance-based incentive, so it's per kilowatt hour generated by the solar project. And in the REG program, you don't qualify for net metering, which is the program that allows you to offset your electricity usage, whereas in the REF program, you could participate in net metering. So we'd evaluated both in our August cost-benefit analysis and found that, since prices of electricity have skyrocketed recently, the REF program with the net metering incentive provided the most financial benefit compared to the REG program. And here's an estimate of the annual solar production, which is pictured in yellow here in this bar graph, versus the annual estimated electricity usage, which is pictured in blue here. And this is a typical year, and we used weather data from Rhode Island to simulate these results, and you can see it's by month. So solar production would peak in the summertime, June-July timeframe, whereas the electricity profile is a bit more sporadic. But on average, we'd expect the on-site usage would be 121,000, whereas the solar usage would be 101,000. So, you have a bit more on-site usage compared to your production, which is great because there's actually a limit in Rhode Island that your solar project can only be credited up to 125% of the usage. And then we did we generated cash flow And this is picturing just the solar only costs and related savings. So we used a third-party ownership as a power purchase agreement, set at a 10% discount to your power prices, which is the yellow line here. So you'd see immediate savings on your electricity bill, which would equate to, about 60 to 70K over 25 years in savings. And then the direct ownership project, which is through the Renewable Energy Fund, pictured in blue, and you'd see you can also achieve immediate savings through the Efficient Buildings Fund, which is how we'd model it. And then, you see that those exceed the power purchase agreement. And then year 11, year 12, we expect some equipment replacements. So that's why it kind of drops off a little bit here and then shoots back up. So definitely a lot more potential savings through the Narragansett own and operate scheme. And then just wanted to
Okay. All right, so the time is now 7:30. We're just going to proceed with our public hearing so that we stay on time for this. So next up, we have a motion to open and hold a show cause evidentiary hearing sitting as a licensing board regarding the possible suspension and/or revocation for cause of the Class B victualler license, liquor license held by Ralph Yagjits, doing business as the Tavern, located at 140 Point Judith Road, Unit 5, pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws, Section 3-5-21A and 3-5-23B. So I have a motion.
So moved. Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
So as Councilwoman Eva stated, pursuant to the authority granted to the town by the state, the town previously issued a liquor license to Mr. Ralph Jagscheitz with certain conditions. The town council is sitting tonight as a licensing board regarding the possible revocation or suspension of the license. As you see in the documentation that was submitted, in lieu of the agreement, which is subject to town council approval, this is not a full-blown evidentiary show cause hearing. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. There will be no public comment. Testimony will be on the record. The town will present its findings for the periods between 9/19/2022 and February 23rd, 23. The evidentiary report produced by the police, along with the proposed agreement to be voted on by the town council, and the affidavit signed by Mr. Jagscheitz will be part of the record. Mr. Jagscheitz is entitled to an attorney and is entitled to address the claims against him with or without an attorney. He's entitled to present evidence and cross-examine those town employees that testify here tonight. He's entitled to submit documentation for the record. At the completion of testimony, the show cause evidentiary hearing will be closed, and the town council shall consider the agreement before it. So having said that, I would welcome up the police department to present its case.
Good evening. So this establishment came to our attention starting in September.
Please state your name for the record.
I'm sorry. Lieutenant Justin Hoffman, Narragansett Police. So this establishment, the Tavern, came to our attention starting in September at the beginning of the URI school year. We began having issues with underage drinking inside the establishment, making multiple arrests over the course of the fall semester. We continued to monitor the establishment weekly, conducting bar checks. We responded to several disturbances at the establishment, to include a large brawl involving our canine, and multiple subjects were arrested as a result of the investigation. Based on all of the issues that we had at the establishment over the course of the first few weeks, Captain Sutton and myself set up a meeting with the owner of the establishment to go over the problems that we were having. He met with us. We had the meeting. Captain Sutton can actually go into more detail on the results of the meeting, which led us to this show cause hearing. That's kind of a synopsis of the large packet that we gave you.
Captain Matthew Sutton with the Narragansett Police. So throughout the fall semester, it's my job as the executive officer to monitor the police reports that are coming in on a weekly basis. And as the semester was going on, the number of police reports that were being generated at the tavern was mounting. The third shift supervisors, Lieutenant Hoffman and the sergeants, were doing an excellent job going in there weekly on Thursday, mostly on Thursday and Friday nights, checking IDs, watching the plaza. Things kind of came to a head in early December. They had already twice tried to talk to the licensee about his practices there. In early December, we had 2 more underage people found there, openly drinking. And then on December 18th, the large disturbance that the lieutenant referred to happened, in which time 4 people were arrested. 1 police officer was thrown to the ground during that. Of those 4 people, 3 of them were under 21. At that point, the URI semester was winding down. What really sort of put me over the edge on this was after Christmas, we had a local 18-year-old got found in there, not a URI student, someone who lives in town. So at that point, the concern was that the word is out, that this is a place that anyone can go into and drink. And based on the reports I was seeing, it seemed like it was a lot more than isolated incidents, that it was systemic, that there weren't systems in place there to keep a college crowd in order and of the right age. So I composed a letter in early January. We had a little break. URI went on winter break. I composed a letter in early January asking Mr. Jagshitz to contact me to set up a meeting. He responded promptly. We set up a meeting after a little back and forth. We finally met with him a few days after the spring semester began on January 30th. And at that meeting, I reviewed all the incidents that had happened over the fall semester in order. And then we get into some of his practices. And at that time, he had told us that he wasn't sure if his staff was tip certified. They weren't wearing uniforms. He didn't have any food, even though he submitted a menu because it's a Class B victualling license. Alcohol was being served in parts of the establishment that were only supposed to be with people sitting down with a server. And most telling, he told me that he had no clue how to discern a good ID from a bad ID. So now we knew the reason why these things were going on. We had a systemic problem. So he tried to work with us, and we came up with some things that we're going to put in place. He agreed to have all staff tip certified. He agreed to have his staff wear uniforms that had staff on them, and a few other things. He did also agree at that time to comply with the town council's own restrictions, which, like I said, includes having a food menu and only serving alcohol in the bar area unless you're sitting down with a meal. It was concerning because he said he didn't have a kitchen staff, he didn't have any food in the place, and he didn't have any waiters and waitresses. So the intent, to be a bar only was there from the beginning, it appears. So at that meeting on January 30th, we agreed to give him some time to clean up his act and try to come into compliance. We agreed to give him 5 weekends, 2 of which would have been during the URI spring break period, so we weren't expecting much those weekends. So we basically gave him 3 weekends to sort of get his act together. With that in mind, once the semester kind of got rolling, got in full effect, Lieutenant Hoffman and his staff put together a proactive operation where we took a couple of underage people, brought them in, briefed them, and sent them into tried to get into the bar without IDs, or with fake IDs rather. And that did not go well. They both were able to enter the establishment even after the ID checker machines scanned them as flashing red, which should have been no good. And then we had another incident later in February. At that point, we were approaching the first week of March deadline that I had given him to come into compliance, and it was clear that we had not achieved what we were looking for at that January meeting, and we began to prepare this package.
Chief Sean Corrigan, I'd like to start out with a policy statement for the record. The Narragansett Police Department takes a firm stance against the underage drinking, especially policy number 35002, to combat such illegal activity. The department's underage drinking enforcement program consists of various types of compliance checks and is designed to reduce the availability of alcohol to persons under 21 years of age. Lieutenant Hoffman and Captain Sun provided you with testimony tonight on the efforts that we have taken this year to address the issues with this particular establishment. On February 17th of 2023, due to a lack of improvement in the operations, I instructed Captain Sun to have a show cause evidentiary package assembled, and I notified the town manager that this was taking place. Due to the transition between the solicitors, the first draft did not get sent to Solicitor Davis until March 6th, with the final draft being on March 16th. We then had the scheduling for the scheduling of tonight's hearing on March 20th, and I spoke to the license holder, Ralph Jexitz, letting him know it would be happening, and I saw him at the meeting that night, so he was aware of it. I then instructed Captain Sutton to have the show cause evidentiary package hand-delivered to the license holder, which was arranged and documented in our record management system. I then spoke to the license holder about the situation, advised him of the hearing, advised him of the date of the hearing, and the nature of the hearing. He spoke to me at that time and had mentioned some of the efforts that he was making to try and improve the operations of the establishment. And I know from reviewing our files that there's been a past practice in the town to try and work with license holders to try and come up with a negotiated disposition that is agreeable to the police department and to the license holder. So I asked him if he would be willing to meet with myself and other members of the department and a town solicitor to discuss that, and he agreed. We had that meeting on Thursday, March 30th at 11 a.m. in my conference room. The agreement that you have before you was discussed at length. He had the opportunity to ask questions. He had the opportunity to read it himself. And at the conclusion of that, after being asked if he was signing of his own free will and under no duress, he stated that he was. He was under no duress and that he was doing so of his own free will. So after signing the affidavit later that day, he contacted me and asked to have those suspension dates changed. I did not accept that. I advised him that the agreement you had before you is what was acceptable to the police department and nothing else, that he would have to advocate for himself tonight at this hearing. He then sent me the action plan that you see requested in our agreement via email. And that agreement had a series of action items such as experienced staff, tip certified, front and back door security, no loitering at front door, hand stamp or wristband program to identify patrons, 5, use of age verification ID scanner, 6, shirts marked staff for doormen and women, 7, only front door entrance and exit, 8, back door only for emergency entrance and exit 9, no drinks outside, 10, capacity not to exceed 90% of maximum capacity, 11, manager or owner on the floor at all times. So this was a good list of action items. I would mention that it does not address the food issue that has been previously discussed. The license holder had come before the council when he got his license and made it known that he would be offering food to his patrons, specifically in the area within the tavern that's designated for the seating and eating with drinks only. He's had an established practice since he's been operating, of having people in there drinking and not having any food. Included in his email was, again, his request. It says, I am seeking, because of financial hardship and customer inconvenience, to have 10-day suspension revised from April 6th to April 15th to April 4th to April 13th. This will eliminate 2 college nights, but only 1 weekend. And then he thanks me for his time. Once again, we did not accept that as part of the agreement. That concludes my testimony, and I'll invite the license holder to come forward now.
My name is Ralph Jackson. I am the owner of the tavern. I apologize if I'm a little shaky. I'm not too good at public speaking.
Excuse me, Ralph,
Yes,
would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes, I do.
Thank you.
I have no defense of the past, and I don't want to go there. I have not been a good neighbor. I would like to be a good neighbor to the town and my fellow, restaurants and other businesses there. We have everything in place at this time, an adequate staff, an experienced one, and a reliable one. We will do everything that's been asked of us, and I do not see any of these issues arising in the past. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for the past. I do have menus here for you. They're not the greatest, but I can have them implemented as soon as possible, and we can build on that. I will give you a few copies. Otherwise, I just hope for another chance, that's all. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me.
You can just give the menus to the clerk after you're done.
If you have any questions, or members of the town council have questions, this would be the time to
Yep.
ask.
Anyone wishing to ask any questions from the council?
I want to take a
Councilor
look
Lawler?
at the menus coming around. Thank you. One question for you. You, in the reading material that the chief staff put together, you had mentioned that you don't have a kitchen staff. How will you be able to make these items?
I do have a kitchen staff now. It's a commissary kitchen. We rent the kitchen out, so it's active 4 days a week for SoCo Veg. So I have an experienced chef there, and my sister-in-law is going to come in and do some cooking for me, and we should be able to find a waitress, no problem. If not, I will be the waiter, which I'm not looking forward to. But we do have the capabilities of putting out the food and putting out the food properly.
So, do you have another
Yeah.
question, Jill?
Councilor Cicely Bonham.
So, were you aware that one of the obligations was to have food at the restaurant? I know you just made the menu up, but that was the prior expectation. Were you aware of that? And just elaborate on that.
We have been there for some time under the ownership of the, if I can, Mike O'Connell, and we tried twice to implement a menu there. Both times were failures, and as they became failures, I tended to start to look for other ways. I went for a younger crowd. We do all right with people 30 and down. The hospitality crowd, when they get out of work, we have a good amount of restaurants, at least a half a dozen of them that come by. So we ended up putting a pool table and a foosball table in the dining area, and the food thing went out the door.
So you were aware of it, but it didn't happen. Is that what you're saying?
I tried twice, but I had absolutely no patronage in there at all.
Okay.
As for the amount of hours put in, it was basically me doing everything. And after I got rid of that staff, because I would get in there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I wouldn't see anybody till 8 o'clock at night, a straggler here or there. So poor judgment by me, and, I'm sorry if I misled you. It wasn't my intent. And again, we will try to, head in the right direction with that this time, whether it sells or not.
Thank you.
As a follow-up to Susan's
Kenna,
question,
I think, sorry.
Does she want to follow?
Okay.
I'll follow the council president's direction.
Councilor Ferrandi, you
Okay.
haven't spoken yet.
Thank you, Mr. Drainski. Have all your policies been followed? It's been going on for a little bit of while, but I know the chief's been working on a plan for this. This TIPS training, is everybody that's employed now is fully up to date on that? And everything else that the
Everybody-
chief asked
yes.
for? Chief, if you want to respond,
Everything
you
he
can.
asked for is there. Meaning everybody's tip certified. I've been tip certified. We have a ID scanner, which is about 90% or 80% accurate. We have been confiscating IDs. We've learned how to do them better. It's been difficult to find good door staff versus people who want to, and I'm not trying to be a clown here, but want to deal drugs or pick up girls or do favors or this or that. So it hasn't been easy over the last couple of months, but as of this point, I have good people that I know and people I can count on that are reliable.
Question for the chief. I would make sure that all of those statements are all true and effective before an agreement is agreed to upon.
Councilor Ferrandi, is the game plan would be if he does get a second chance, the compliance checks will continue. So as you see, there is a suspension there with days held in abeyance, and he's on probation. So all those penalties would come into effect if there's a future violation.
So can I just ask a
Thank
question
you.
about that?
Sorry.
Just, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Can I ask a
Councilor
question about
Kopech, yes.
that? So if he doesn't comply, all right, so we're
Yes.
going to, if there was a suspension, the business comes back into being again, you folks do your checks, there are violations, there's another suspension, right? That's the next step, or is that, or,
No, you'll see there's, he gets a 10-day suspension.
right?
Those extra days, 35, whatever it is held in abeyance. So if there's another violation, substantial violation, we'll document that, we'll come before you, and they'll be suspended for that, plus whatever additional penalty you give, or you may choose to revoke his license at that point.
Gotcha,
And
okay.
then his appeal process would be to the Department of Business Regulation.
Okay, but we start with this short suspension, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lawler, do you want the follow-up question to?
Yes, thank you. Follow-up to Susan's question about the food. It sounds like you met with Captain Sutton on the 9:30, and he brought to your attention that you were required to have food, but again, that didn't happen. It's a lot of promises, and it doesn't seem like they're being fulfilled. It's concerning. We did receive a few emails about this subject, and one struck me as something I wanted to discuss with our colleagues. If this had happened at a residence, there would have been social host laws imposed and fines. And I wanted to ask the chief if there were any fines whatsoever with the violations of underage drinking that occurred at the establishment.
There's no fines of the license holder or the servers, because we did not make cases on them. We didn't have the probable cause for them on the evening they did the compliance checks. There were fines imposed on the patrons who were in possession of the alcohol.
So if this was at a home and they had this amount of violations at one home, what would happen to that?
If we responded to a, say, a noise complaint, and we stopped somebody coming out of a residence with alcohol who was under 21, then the renters would be cited $500 each for the social host violation. Truth.
Any additional questions from the council?
Just
Councilor
to follow
Kopech.
up on Ms. Lawler's question about that. So that $500 is is ordinance-based, right? Yes. Okay. So that's something you can do.
Okay. Any further questions from the council right now?
I'll do a follow-up to that question.
Sure.
Chief, if there is a second offense, does the fee go up? If 500 for the first offense, the second offense, does it increase? Social host?
$500 is the max fine you can get.
Maximum, okay.
Okay. If there are no further questions from the council members, is there a motion to close the show cause evidentiary hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So next, we can discuss as a council, so we can approve, modify, or reject the signed agreement. So at this time, would anyone like to start the conversation? Or make a motion at this time? Any of the following, the previous?
I have a question. If I'm reading the agreement was never read out loud, but the way I'm reading it, it says, it shall be suspended for 45 days, but the actually only suspension is 10 days. Is that correct? And that the other 35 days are in
Abeyance.
a warning or abeyance or whatever? So the actual
That's
suspension is only
correct.
10 days, and the certain
Yeah,
days.
it's a 45-day suspension, you're serving 10, the other 35 are held in abeyance.
Okay.
Okay.
And he's asking for the dates to be changed, so it will then, it almost sounded like it was going to accommodate along with the URI vacation, so he would be missing out
Correct.
on,
The dates that the police department believe are acceptable are April 6th to April 15th.
Yeah.
If you're looking to move those
Thank-
dates.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I think this is a very fair, is fair, and I don't think, I mean, we did get letters and emails from concerned residents, and thinking this was too light of a, just the outcome and what the, I guess you could call punishment would be for doing this, but again, I think it's pretty much a gift to you, Mr. Yagdish. So, any other council members wishing to modify it? So we can, if there's no recommended changes,
my colleague over here just looked at me and said, should we talk about making it longer? And let's open up that discussion.
I mean, I think that this is pretty inappropriate behavior, to have as many chances as this gentleman had, and to have a police officer, assaulted, to have large crowds of people fighting outside, public urination. I mean, there's so many parts to this that are just pretty astonishingly awful. And, I have no desire to ruin someone's business, but I also think that, when you give somebody, 8 chances to get it straight and it wasn't straight, I think Jill made the point earlier that she's not sure how you believe somebody, and I tend to agree with that. So it's just, I mean, I'm happy to go with what the agreement says, but I wouldn't mind if it went longer.
right? So I think that there is provisions if there is a violation, then.
True.
So I think, in my opinion, I'm fine with approving the signed agreement as is.
Okay.
Any other council members wishing to comment?
10 days out of the 45 is about 25%, 1/4. And I wouldn't be hesitant to add 5 days onto that and bring it a little bit more closer to the original of the 45 days, if there's any agreement to that.
Any other council members wishing to comment? I'll just add that, I mean, I do support local business, and I think there is a mechanism in place. If there is a violation, then it's a little bit harsher penalties, and I have the utmost confidence in our police force.
As do I have confidence in the chief and his staff. tend to agree with Steve that we could maybe add 5. We also need to take into consideration all the other tavern, like other bars and restaurants who make sure that they adhere to all of these rules and regulations. And really, is it fair to them for us not to make sure that their competitors are also doing the same? I don't see anything wrong with adding an additional 5. I don't know, Deb?
Well, the only thing, I mean, so if we didn't add the additional 5, the bottom line is that this gentleman, who does not seem to be particularly trustworthy, has another chance. If he has, figured out a way to make this work for himself and his business, we'll find out pretty quickly. So maybe, I believe that the police department will be, engaged with him as soon as he goes back into business again. So, I mean, we could just wait and see what happens and then do what we have to do. So I'd be okay with that.
Correct, because we can always, if it's not followed, we can always just revoke the license. So that's
Right.
the next step if there's no compliance with this. So.
Okay.
Any other council members? Okay, so would somebody, so we need to decide, make a motion.
So that motion would be to approve of the agreement between the police department and Mr. Jagshitz. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the motion is to approve the signed agreement, which is in the packet. Do I have a motion by
From the
Councilor
April
Kosak?
6th to
second
the April
that.
15th date.
Same date, yeah.
So you motioned, I'll second.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion to approve the signed agreement by Councilor Kopic, seconded by Councilor Cicely Bonanno. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Do I have? Good
luck.
Good luck, thanks.
Good luck.
Okay, next up, we have a motion to open and hold a public hearing on the proposed budget for the 2023 to 2024 fiscal year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Tierney, are you presenting the budget?
I will start, and then our Finance Director, Christine, will come up as well.
Thank you.
Good evening again, everyone. We've been working on the FY24 budget since December. The whole process involves multiple meetings with finance, followed by pre-meetings, meetings, and post-meetings with the senior management team. There are two components of the budget, the operating budget and the capital improvement plan. The budget is proposed to the Town Council as a result of careful analysis of the town's needs now and in the future. The primary goal always, as we prepare the budget, is to ensure for essential and the enhanced services that are expected by our residents at a cost that is most palatable and efficient, and it meets the appetite of the council and the community. The budget as presented is still evolving. Some examples will change after we have the workshops, the work sessions next week. There are 3 work sessions, and there'll be the first reading of the budget, and the council may give direction to change or to add or to subtract from certain portions of the budget. The ARPA funding, you'll see during the presentation tonight, there was a group of projects that were approved by the council. We're moving forward with those, but sometimes as the dollar figures come in, some are higher, some are lower, and we'll be making those adjustments and letting the council know about it. But it is not it's for the people at home who are watching and the people here tonight, this is not the final budget. This is the proposed budget after meeting with all the department heads, and it's presented to the council for consideration and comments from the public, and the work sessions with the council will provide additional direction as they feel meet the needs of the town. And we do have a presentation. We do have a presentation that Christine Wilson, our finance director, will be making. And I'd like to invite Christine to come up now.
Thank you. Good evening, Councilor President Jazinski and council members. As the town manager said, tonight we're going to be presenting the proposed town manager's budget for the 2023-2024 fiscal
right.
year. What's that?
You're right.
Do I just hit the next button? Lies. Okay. Oh, boy, technical difficulty. Aha, okay. Tonight, we're going to focus on the general fund dollars, though. There's not going to be any discussion of the enterprise funds or any special funds, because the general fund is the one funded with tax dollars. And so here we go. As of 6/30/2022, our unassigned fund balance is at 19.5%, approximately $12 million. This budget is presented with a 4% maximum tax levy increase, which is a 3.47% increase in the tax rate for residential. There's a substantial use of unassigned fund balance reserve of $2,333,042. This is mostly due to an increase in, obviously, personnel costs, insurance, capital projects, and utility costs. In 2023, we have budgeted $2,576,426 to use for this year's budget. In 2022, we didn't use any of our unassigned fund balance to balance the budget. What's notable also is that we're at 100% funding for both OPEB and the pension funds of the actuarial determined contribution. We're also recommending a $200,000 transfer to the Peer Market Fund to cover the operational expenses that we've had over the past several years while the library building was in flux.
Can we ask in the middle of this? I have a question about that. What is the peer market?
I had to pull out all the expenses that were associated with that building before it was a library, because the library can't put in for the bond for fire protection, general insurance, purchased water service, things of that nature. All those expenses came up.
So, okay, that's 200,000?
To cover the last few years in expenses, yes. And we can talk about that more in the work sessions, okay?
Thank you.
We're in the second year of the increased allocation for the land trust. We had waived it in 2021. So we did an extra 25,000 this year, so it was 75, and we're going to do the last 25,000 in 2024. And in this budget presented to you, those were estimated healthcare costs. Those have come in since the printing of that budget, so that result is about $132,000 savings.
The legal fees, also, you forgot to mention the legal fee increase.
Oh, good catch. It's a one-liner. And we also increased the legal service fees by $80,000, but as Mr. Tierney noted, we may need to even increase that more based on this year's fees that we've dealt with. Again, that's a work session thing we can discuss then. This is just a graph of the funds over the last several years of actual and budgeted. This is the total budget, including the school transfer. So you can see that 41% this year is the school transfer, and salary and benefits obviously are always higher. And this is without the transfer in it. So our salary and benefits are at 61%. And with the other transfers, which would be like the land trust, OPEB, et cetera, that's about 80-something%. So that's the majority of the budget, those three things. Just a graph of the capital improvement projects, and those are detailed in the capital improvement plan. But this year we're looking at 200 in the general fund. I'm sorry, $2,664,095. It's a little bit of an increase. Just a reminder of the ARPA funds. We have them all allocated $4.6 million, and they have to be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and spent, checks written, by December 31st, 2026. These were the original projects that were approved last year. These were the additional projects that were approved this year. So you can see we're about $400,000 overspent at this point. Well, not overspent, we haven't spent the money. We just have to adjust. And this is the changes with town manager suggested amendments. Again, that could be happened during work session or now. But the wastewater groin project came in, we had it last year as the 1.2 million, if you remember, 1.25. That, we don't need that for that project, which is excellent on John's part. And so he would like to do some other projects you'll hear about for $540,000. His wastewater, his water upgrades are still in there. The fire station renovations were originally $650,000 estimated. They came in at $1,113,911. That's for phase 1 of Station 2. And that'll also come up during the work sessions. The fire pumper, if you remember, we had to put some money out because of the inventory issues. So that's about $124,000. Then the bike path, affordable housing, Narrow River dredging, the front steps in Town Hall, the IT renovations, and what was left for Town Hall renovations of about $653,000 from, I think it was like 1.1 million originally. So we just reduced town halls. But we can have more discussion about that. This is just kind of like a get the wheels turning. Okay, the impact on taxes. So the proposed tax rate for a residential property is $9.31 per thousand, and the commercial rate is proposed at $12.57. The 22-23 rates are $9 and $12.14 per thousand. Again, the increase in the tax rate is due to the 4% maximum increase in the levy. And the tax levy increase about $2,188,403 in revenue, or 3.4% to the tax rate. The state aid reimbursements are projected that are in the budget. The town manager met with staff, obviously, as he said, and he reduced the department's proposed budgets of $70 million, $726,023, and reduced it by $1,792,349. And you can see the reductions there in capital improvement and operating. Now, the school department asked for a 1.36% increase. When we did the budget, it was at 1.27 in this budget. So, to go up to the 1.39 they asked for, it's another $33,133. But right now, in the budget you're looking at, it's a 1.27% increase. Slight increase in capital projects of $266,710. The finance director is asking for 1 FTE. Yes, me. Of a pension and OPEB, I'm kind of post-employment benefits coordinator. And then that would be funded through the pension fund trust and the OPEB fund trust at a 60-40%. That documentation is with the solicitor now because there is a lot of regulation around getting paid positions through those funds. It's very strict. So we're looking at that. It would probably free up 25% of my time in clerical duties running the pension. Again, it would be it's not the general fund. There would be a slight increase in liability because it's another pensioner, but all the salary and benefits would come out of the pension fund and the OPEB trust, if approved. Special appropriations increased $95,561. This is not presented in the budget, but we're requesting a potential bond issuance. So it would be in 2024 for $4.2 million, and it would be $2.6 million from the original road bond, the $17 million back in 2012. that would deplete that bond, that would be finished. And then 1.6 from the new $20 million bond, which we would hope would be for town hall renovations that we got cut from ARPA. There's a lot of work. Probably the front, we're looking at the front, I believe, Mr. Tierney, right? The frontage, yes. Other big considerations is in 24, 25, halfway through that year, we're going to lose the SAFER grant. That's about $500,000 to $550,000 that year. We'll need to increase the budget if we want to keep the additional 8 firefighters. And in 25, 26, that'll be over $1 million. I know it's far out, but in 32, 33, the projection for the for pension fund will be at about $11 million. Right now, we're at about $7.4 million. They're going to be looking at $11 million. That's a nice chunk of change. And then 33, 34, there's going to be a big reduction in debt service. So it'll be an interesting time, but you need to plan accordingly. Also, the tangible tax cap law that went into effect last year. So whatever our rate is approved as of 2024, this budget we're talking about, that will be capped. Tangible properties is capped. That's the highest it can ever go as a tax rate. And that would require now a change in our tax classifications in our ordinance. They're doing that at the state level first, and then we'll trickle down. We have probably about 2 years to get that going. And then they're also talking about a phase-out. The Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council is talking about a phase-out of tangible taxes to some degree. I think they will, I heard 250,000 and below, or 100,000, I mean, and above, or 100,000 and above to 250,000 and above, where they would pay tangible taxes, but everybody else would be exempt. So this is what I put together for you. If we keep going at a 2% tax levy increases, what's been going on since 2018, by 2027, all expenses and revenues pretty much equal, except for the levy, we're going to need about $8 million in fund balance. If we go up by a 4% increase over the next few years, we're looking at a 3.8. And again, that is everything equal. You know, things will change along the way. We have a reval coming, a statistical reval, so that could change. But that's just everything going equal out, so you can project, you can see the difference. It's $5 million if we don't start going to 4% soon. And then the tax rate, you can see at 2%, we're at $9. By 2027, it'd be about $9.44. But if we do a 4%, we go to next year, $9.31, and 2027 would be about the $10 before we even got to $10 a rate, you know? And if going up to the 4%, we're going to increase our revenues by $1 million. It goes up about 500,000 every percent. So we go up 4%, it's about $2 million in tax revenue. So that's where that extra million, because we've been going 2%, 2%. And then it compounds over the years. So, you know, with the 4%, we'd be at 4.6 million. Without it, we're barely at a $400,000 increase in our revenues year over year. Make sense? Kind of, sort of? Gives you something to think about. What's next is our town council work sessions. The 11th, 12th, and 13th. The second public hearing is scheduled for May 1st. We have the adoption of the capital improvement resolutions scheduled for May 15th, and the first reading of the budget ordinance also May 15th, and the second reading is scheduled for June 5th. Any questions?
No. Mr. Tierney, did you want to comment on that first, or?
Do it now, or I can do it after?
Well, we have the work sessions planned. I don't know if council members want to just wait for the work sessions to discuss it, or if you just want to piggyback on Christine right now. I'll
just go quickly. As the budget was submitted, there was roughly 611,000 that was cut from operating. Operating was already down to, since 20, we have been really pinching the pennies on the operating budget. There really isn't much wiggle room there. And 1.182 from capital, and sometimes that's moving projects down the road or scaling them back into phases. Those are some of the points. The 1.25 million that was freed up with the grind project, we will be addressing the council with that shortly as far as where would that be repurposed. But what Christine had mentioned was the facade at the town hall, which much of the original money that was removed from approved projects was farmed out to different projects. One of them was the town hall itself with the stairs on the south side of the building. But we are going to recommend that some of that money gets repurposed to that to make the front entrance fully handicap accessible coming in from the parking lot as opposed to the way it's set up now. But that will be coming your way shortly. And as far as the school, we continue to have discussions with the school department, even though it's budgeted as that, to talk about some different ways for savings. And as far as the FTE position for pension and OPEB, Christine has spoken to me at length about it. We discussed it. I support it 100%. Again, it still has to be reviewed by legal, and the trust has to look at it and whatnot. But it's a wise investment. And although the forecast for the future is difficult to look at, it's a reminder that we can only kick the can down the road so much. But we do have to pay for essential services and the enhanced services that people in this community get, and they're used to getting, and they should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
So at this time, I know this is a public hearing, so I will open it up to members of the public. If anyone wishes, Mr. Vangamish, do you want to speak on this? Mr. Vangamish? Please state your name and address.
Yeah, my name is Richard Vangermersh, 55 Osceola, and I had planned to talk about this at the open forum, but clearly we're looking at a budget, and I realize I'm drifting off into boring accounting. Business accounting isn't quite as boring as government accounting, which is the ultimate in boredom. But the Finance Committee has been concerned for the last 2 years of the drift towards, I hesitate to word, financial insufficiency in the wastewater fund. We have been operating at this fund at a figure, i.e. expenses higher than revenues, for I think about years. And this does not include depreciation. When you include depreciation, our wastewater fund becomes frightening. And there are differences. In the budget, we have our operating fund. The wastewater fund is a special service fund. It isn't an operating fund, but it's handled in the budget as if it were an operating fund. And I think this year the deficit is quite frightening. Now, I do plan, and the committee plans to be at the hearing on the 12th, but I do want to inform you people here in the town that we have a serious problem. It would not be a problem if everyone in the town utilized the wastewater system. Now, I don't know what % of people don't, but it is, I would say, a relatively substantial amount of people so it makes a difference if you're operating at a negative amount. Because ultimately, when the wastewater fund goes kaput, and at this rate, I'd give it another 2 or 3 years, then it becomes a problem for the general taxpayer, whether that taxpayer is hooked up or not to the system. Now, I realize we have a squeeze. That 4% limit is a squeeze. We have substantial soaring costs. But I do want to say we are in a danger zone. We haven't raised water rates, the sewage water treatment rates, I think, in 30 years.
Thank you.
And this is part of our problem. But
Thank you, Mr. Vangermish.
Pardon?
Your time's up, so I'm sorry. but-
is the 3-minute limit on this part of it? It is.
Oh, yeah, you know what? I apologize. There is no limit for you.
Yeah,
on the-
and that is our problem. Now, it's kind of boring to talk about accounting. I think Mark is the only student I have, and past student I have in the room. I may be bringing back some snoozes to Mark. When I lecture about government accounting, very few people care about government accounting. I do. I had the thrill of twice being a federal employee with GAO and NASA dealing with accounting matters, and also briefly with the Rhode Island Auditor General. I do care, and the chairman of the Narragansett Town Finance Committee, Mark Abrams, is really one of the key experts in the country on this. But I urge you to stop this drift. I realize to a taxpayer, you get your increase, I believe it was with 3.47%. And the minute they see an increase in the wastewater fee, they go, oh, look at this tax increase. We have not educated the public to say this is not a tax increase. Costs have increased immensely. We have not changed the wastewater rate in 30 years. And it's only been the last 4 or 5 years that we've sort of gotten into big problems. But if we don't face this problem this year, and we haven't faced it in the proposed budget, we are headed for a severe crisis in which the general taxpayer has to bail out the wastewater system. This means people like myself, who pays a substantial amount to a private company to handle my wastewater, will have not only have to pay for my pumping of whatever it is it goes into, I have to pay for the others who have not, for the last few years, paid their cost of service. In Massachusetts, according to Mark Abrams, and he's from Massachusetts, there is a requirement that the wastewater fund, the water fund, be operated at zero. Revenue and expenses are the same, and depreciation is an expense. And Rhode Island does not have that rule. If it did, we wouldn't drift it as bad as we are now. But I think the Finance Committee agrees with me, even though it is my baby. Looking at it, we made a series of recommendations a few months ago that hopefully were forwarded to you. We are in deep trouble.
Thank you, Mr. Vandermeesh. Mr. Wojciechowski?
Stan Wojciechowski, 1044 Boston Neck Road.
Hello, Stanley. I I meant to swear Mr. Vangamish in, but would you please raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
I can't, the professor is fantastic, no doubt about it, especially for long term. What I looked at, what I heard tonight was that there's a $2.188 million increase for the taxpayer to have to pay. And then I look, and it's a fund balance, 2.33. So we have a fund balance here, which would easily wipe out any increase at all. I looked at the individuals, the wastewater, the water, they all seem to show a balance somewhere, 300,000, something. They weren't zero at this point. Maybe they will be. I don't know the long term. When I'm looking at it right now, they are not negative. They don't need a fund balance taken away from this fund balance to operate right now. In the long term, we have to plan for that. But right now, today, we don't need any tax increase for today, for this year. We got it, fund balance. Fund balance, 2.33 million. Tax increase, proposed, 2.188. With the ARPA and all available, most likely there will be no emergencies popping up. Done such a fantastic job in this opera thing, evaluating all our needs, all the requirements. I doubt we're going to need any fund balance for some emergency. I'm sure they made an analysis of all the potential emergencies we could possibly have, and they got funding for it, or they could probably move it over. I just implore you, just because you can go at 4% doesn't mean you have to. Will you consider the taxpayer, with all the costs going up in so many areas, would it be so nice to hear this, our government say, and I'll bet you we'll be the only town in this state that we have a 0% increase in requirements from the taxpayer, just for 1 year. I don't know, there's a bond out there, a road bond. Maybe we could switch some of those road bonds for any emergency. There's some other monies out there for emergencies. Or take a short-term loan for emergency until next year. But right now, we don't need an increase in tax for the taxpayer, just because we can. And that's what it looks like. Just because you can, you do. Not that you need it. And that's an awful feeling. I speak for the taxpayers and those who are having some difficulty. I have a little old lady, $3,000 behind on rent. I think I need it. How can I evict her? So it's one old man paying $450 a month. Please don't raise it $10. I see those people. And it's not me paying the taxes, it's them. I see those people in need. I see them every day. And what you do impacts them. I don't have a job where I can pay for their tax. I'm sorry. I have too much maintenance work to have to do. So please reconsider and do something for the people of Narragansett, the residents, the taxpayers. 0%, just 1 year, just 1 year. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lynch?
Dennis Lynch, 22 Central Street.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Just so, thank you, Christine, for excellent presentation for a first pass on the budget. I have a question and a comment. And the question is, as we talked about the substantial reduction in debt service 8, 9, 10 years out, I was hoping maybe in the next presentation or in the workshops, we could see a more discrete kind of waterfall of the long-term debt service. So just get a feel of when stuff is sloughing off as we put new debt on. That would be helpful. And then the question to Christine is, to what extent, is her confidence level with the out years here, as we're kind of in a new environment now with high interest rates and with the inflation pace right now? I'm curious if she's been able to kind of create a sensitivity approach on that. After you get out 1 year from here, those are going to have dramatic impacts on the expenses as well as the revenues, and as well as some of our investments that might impact. So that was just a follow-ups to that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak for the public about the proposed budget? Seeing none. So this, for our council members, we're going to be having the work session, so this is just kind of an overview, so we can discuss this during our budget workshops on the 11th, 12th, and 13th. If there's no other comments from the public, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion to close the public hearing. Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. So next, I know we just had a couple of minutes left of that presentation. Caleb, right? It was a couple minutes. Just for completeness sake, we're just going to run it.
Modeled at a low interest rate because in August, interest rates, it was before the hikes really begun. So you'd expect this number to be a bit higher and therefore this savings number to be a bit lower. Here's the estimated annual cash flow, which also incorporates the electric vehicle charger installation cost. So we list out, the estimates of what we'd modeled in terms of costs and rebates and credits. So for an overall net cost of just under $132,000, and then this is the estimated annual cash flow. So you see the solar savings, and then operations and maintenance from solar and EV charging, as well as a loan payment through 15 years, which generates an average annual savings of $4,100. And that's all I had. So hopefully this was helpful in informing your decision.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that concludes that presentation, just for completeness sake. So if any other council members have any questions, they can email Cadmus, correct, Lori? Yes, okay, perfect.
Excuse me, Eva, could we get a copy of that presentation?
Yes, we will. Everyone will get a copy of that presentation, and any comments can be forwarded to that. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Caleb. Okay, so next we're going to move on to the open forum public comment portion of the meeting. It's the open forum public comment is a time for any member of the public to speak on a topic not on the meeting agenda. A sign-in sheet is available to members of the public who wish to speak during open forum public comment and located at the table in the back of the council chambers. Speakers will be called in the order as they appear on the sign-in sheet before open forum public comment is closed. Members of the public who did not sign up will be given the chance to speak. Speaking in a meeting during open forum public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Speakers are required to state their name and address before speaking and are expected to conduct themselves in an orderly and respectful fashion. The comments of citizens accessing this portion of the meeting are neither adopted nor endorsed by the body, but heard as requested. Oh, sorry.
Richard Vangermersh, I haven't changed my address, 55 Oseal. I took a walk to examine the horror show at Middlebridge. And a horror show, truly it is. The dilapidated buildings there are absolutely an eyesore. And I'm trying to come up with a solution. I can't, but I do know we have to do some deep thinking about what we want to do on both sides of Middlebridge Road that we have, because we have a public eyesore. I would love to come up with a wonderful park that could be there, a recreation area. I know we have a house way down that has to have access, but there really needs to be some sort of an informal study group to come up with maybe an idea that would entrance the public about the public use of Middlebridge. Given all the limits that are there, it may well be that one person or a group can come up with something really wonderful, but please tear down those buildings. They are a disgrace.
Stanley?
Stan Wojciechowski, 1044 Boston Neck Road. I want to speak about liberty and justice for all. Can't stop from doing that. And will history repeat itself? My grandparents were from Poland, spoke Polish. We lived in a Polish neighborhood, Polish church, spoke Polish, hardly understood it. Grade school, third, fourth grade, teaching us Polish. Polish people all over the place. And I would say, well, why did they leave Poland? Why did they come here? Have to learn another language, move away from their family, to never go back to see them. So I went and got a history book. I got a history book to try to find out why that happened. Because I asked my grandmother that, and all she said, it was a terrible place. She would not go on beyond that. So in the history book here, it showed here in 1933, there was a national referendum showed that 95% of the population approved of the Nazi policies, even as their rights and freedoms were being systematically destroyed. And it also says here, the death penalty was introduced for a wide range of crimes, not only Jewish, Freemasons, or homosexuals, but for gypsies. And I mentioned last year what a gypsy is, non-resident. From my interpretation, that's a renter. So they were actually eliminated. The renters were eliminated. That's what happened in Poland. And I just hope that, I got a feeling we're going down that road with this negativism towards rentals. Get rid of rentals. Student can't be here, for unrelated there. Whatever the reason, it's just a way to get rid of the renters. But then there was a good spot last meeting when Councilman Fernandez mentioned that the problem really was parking and noise. I love that. Parking and noise. It wasn't the renters, it was the parking and noise. Please, thank you for that, and recognizing the parking and noise. And now I want to suggest, in order to address the parking and noise, I suggest that you give our policemen more of a hammer. Cost recovery. Executive order,
Thank you,
give
Mr.
cost
Wojciechowski.
recovery, $1,000 fine for every person who's a criminal due to parking or noise. If it's 3-bedroom, it'll be 3,000. 5-bedroom, 5,000.
Thank you,
Whatever
Mr.
it is.
Wojciechowski. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much, and please approach it from that way, not from, what I'd like to do, just to prove to you.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes is up.
I just want to give you documents. Can I give you some documents here? I want to give you the
You can
documents.
just, why don't you hand
I
them
have
to
5
Mr.
documents
Tierney?
here
Thank you.
showing the history book.
Thank you.
So you can.
Yeah, so we can just leave it with our town clerk. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Mr. Zonfrillo?
Paul Zonfrillo, 7 Windward Circle. Comparing the residents of Narragansett to Nazis is beyond the pale, and I wish the previous speaker would stop doing it. Really, really horrible. And the last speaker's organization, it's not about students. It's about money. And his organization sent out a fundraising email recently, and it goes something like this. They ask for funds, and they say that their organization has, for the past 2 years, fought hard to protect your property rights. We have been successful in overturning and delaying for 2 years the implementation of Narragansett's ordinances limiting rentals to no more than 3 college students and no more than 4 unrelated. Now, we are on the cusp of making more progress on this front. The fight is long, hard, and costly, and we need your financial support today. And this is the really interesting part. During these last 2 years, you have seen the winter bedroom rental rate move from $700 a bedroom to now $1,000 a bedroom, significantly increasing your income. So, no mention of gypsies in this. I just want to point that out. Please consider an appropriate donation to this, our legal fund. Thank you in advance for your consideration, and thank you to those who signed the petition against the terrible terrible Rhode Island House and Senate short-term rental bills. We are fighting these bills for you, and in the legislature, we need your help. The fight goes on. So it really is about money. And again, I would ask that we not hear that rhetoric again, because it's such an insult, and it stirs hate in this community. And this is about money and about making sure there's balance in our town and nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
That's the last name.
Okay. Okay, seeing none. So we'll move on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, seconded by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up, under old business, is a motion to approve victualling holiday theater and dance / entertainment license applications for Narragansett Casino LLC, doing business as Narragansett Casino, 11 Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to local and state regulations.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Oh, aye. Discussion?
Yeah, discussion.
I don't have anything to
Does anyone on the council have anyone from the public? Mr. Doherty?
Hi, my name is Patrick Doherty. I'm counsel to Beach, I'm an attorney with offices at 887 Boston Neck Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island. And I represent Beachcomber Properties LLC, the owners of the property. I want to point out a material misrepresentation in the application that is before the council for the licenses in connection with Narragansett Casino. Contained on their application is a statement in answer to a question, are the premises leased or owned? And they state leased. And I can unequivocally state here, representing the owner of the property, Beachcomber Properties LLC, that there is no lease held by Narragansett Casino. In light of my standing as the property owner, representing the property owner, I would also request an extension of the 3 minutes because there are a number of material points that you should hear due to the clouding of the issues by the applicant. First off,
Mr. Doherty, I'm just going to say you're limited to 3 minutes, so this is just for the licensing portion of it. Any additional issues can be handled outside of this, outside of the council. So yeah, you can get 10 seconds back, but thank you.
okay, well, you cannot give permission as a town council for someone to do business on another party's property absent their consent and their proof of their lawful right to be there. I represent the owner of the property and the landlord of all the rented premises over there. Narragansett Casinos does not have a lease. They misrepresented that to you in their application before here. Show us a lease. Show you the lease. They don't have one. They can't. Why would the town want to embark on being joined to what is already contentious litigation pending in Superior Court in 2 actions, the District Court in 1 action, the Supreme Court in another action, and an arbitration before the American Arbitration Association? First off, they don't have the right to be there. They are going to negatively impact every business in the Narragansett Pier area as a result of their attempted use of all the parking over there. They can't satisfy the parking. There are restrictions. There are deed restrictions of record which show that they don't have the control of the parking that they said that they have at previous iterations of their request for licenses. Any license that any lease was terminated effective 10/6 of 2021 with Beach Street Realty, the tenant under the ground lease with the Pier Associates, which was the predecessor in interest to my client. In addition to that, they don't have the title to that building. There's no such thing as a title to a chattel good, which is what that building is. The lease provision itself states that that is to remain as part of the real estate, and all improvements revert to the ownership of the landlord upon termination of the lease. My client has claim not only to the building and right title and interest to the ownership of the land. And I'd like to provide a set of documents to back up every single thing that I've said to you here to your clerk for your use, and I have copies for all the members of the council as well. So just so you know, for the record, because this is going to be in need of a record, I have a copy of the declaration, or I'm sorry, the planning board recommendation, which required them to get a engineering parking study to prove that they could provide sufficient parking, and also the signature of the owner on any applications. I have a copy of a 2022 lawsuit where they make representations that they don't have a lease in the property, and they're seeking to force to have a lease there. I have a trespass and ejectment answer filed by my client, and the answer by them where they admit that they're trying to get a lease for the property. I have the termination of the lease letter, and I also have the relevant lease provisions, which I am providing a copy for each of you to the clerk and your solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Will the applicant's attorney?
Good evening, Christian Infantolino. I'm with Murphy Pryor and Infantolino, and I do represent the applicant's Narragansett Casino, LLC. First, I would like to state we do have a lease. There's been a properly assigned lease, and to date, there have been no judgments, injunctions, arbitration orders, or anything of the like from any court action stating the same or stating anything different. Second, Mr. Doherty represented that we're in the Supreme Court. As of today, the Supreme Court actually granted the order to deny any appeal that Mr. Doherty has on file with the Supreme Court. Third, and most importantly, I guess I just want to state that currently, right now, the licenses that we're here for, they don't require any landowner approval. My clients purchased the structure and improvements in 2021, and underneath the licenses that they're here, this is not a zoning action, which would require a landowner approval. This is a license that does not require landowner approval, but we do own the structure. And the structure is something that is allowable. And the uses that we're going for have all been approved underneath the Urban Renewal District back in 2012. The applicant does intend for these particular licenses to operate in the same manner of what's been approved, a theater and a banquet facility on the lower floor, and actually not even operating the upstairs, which was granted the health and spa issues. So all operations of these particular licenses would be on the first floor. Back in 2012, they met the parking. The parking hasn't changed since then, and they do continue to still meet the parking. So I do have Lord Kelly here as a representative of them if there are further questions or questions that I can't answer.
Thank you. Okay, I don't, actually, there's a gentleman wishing to speak. I
Sure.
don't, yeah, so.
Sure. I
I'll
just didn't know
have
if you had any further questions.
We will shortly.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ken Kusan from Newport Restaurant Group. We own Trio. Back in 2019, we purchased the building and the property from GP Gilbane. Along with that property, we have exclusive rights to 72 parking spaces in the marketplace. Our concern is that the applicant hasn't sufficiently documented where the spaces are going to be that will be required for their operation. And I also echo Mr. Doherty's comments on recommendations by the planning board from their October meeting suggesting that a professional traffic engineer submit a plan to the council for their approval for the uses that are being suggested for the applicant.
Thank you.
Just to make sure we're all being honest, this is Christian Infantolino again. Any recommendation from the planning board that is being submitted was a recommendation for a change of use. The applicant is not applying for a change of use and will operate, is intending to operate under the uses as already approved.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to the council. I think Councilor Lawler had a question that she would, or some comments.
Yeah, Mark, this is going to go back to you, and I wish that Mr. DeLuca was here tonight. He's not. My question is not about the business licensing whatsoever. It's about parking. When the town purchased the building from the Gilbane organization years ago, there was a formula developed by Mr. DeLuca requiring a certain amount of parking spots, not only for the library, but also for the liquor store operation. I believe it's something like 10 for the liquor store, maybe about 65 or so for the library. And we're hearing tonight that Trio did the same with the Gilbane organization, and they gave a number of 72. So my question is, the applicant has about 300, potentially up to 300 spots just for one use. That would be for the theater use, and doesn't give a number that I could see for the banquet use. Where is the parking? I mean, and was there a parking study completed by the planning board? Because I can't see where people are going to park. And I'm concerned with the other businesses in the pier. We just gave a business license to a coffee shop last meeting. And we have across the street from Trio, there are 3 businesses, and I believe there may be 11 parking spaces there. We also have street parking that we need for our tourists and people who want to walk the seawall. Where's the parking?
Well, I'm really not the person to ask on the parking. It's a fair point. I will say from a legal standpoint, the matters being litigated are very, very interesting. The 4 licenses that are before you, as somebody had mentioned, they don't require landlord approval. So I don't think I don't see any issue with the licenses. The parking, on the other hand, because I was involved in that when we purchased the Belmont building, we were forced to comply with the parking ordinance, even though we were in that special urban renewal district. And I think although the change hasn't, and again, this is really a question for Mike DeLuca's group, but from our experience, and ours is going to be similar to Newport Restaurant Group's, when we purchased it, we were mandated to have a certain number of spaces for what is now going to be the library, a certain amount of spaces for the pure liquor, and then there was some sharing that could occur with regard to handicap spots. So although there's not going to be a change of use with the way the building is going to be used, what has changed is the land and the parking. That has changed dramatically. So when there was one owner of the land, that owner could, provide for sharing of spaces. We now have independent owners of land, like we own. I don't know what the town's position is, but you would, I guess, have to approve the sharing of the spaces we own. Newport Restaurant Group is entitled to use their property for their patrons. And so I think there needs to be an answer on the parking. I'm not that person, but things certainly have changed on the parking side. And we know that firsthand because it created a lot of headache for us.
It did.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to circle back. So this, again, this is just on the licensing. This isn't, I know parking's an issue, but, excuse me, as the licensing body, that we're just really looking at this license that is the same uses that the previous facility had. So this is kind of what we're addressing today. And again, anything other can be handled outside this chamber tonight. I will let others speak. I see Mr. Hallberg, you're in the queue. Feel free to have your 3 minutes.
Hi, Scott Hallberg. I'm the owner of Beachcomber Properties and the property in question. I respect Mr. Davis's opinion that a landlord consent may not be needed for the application, but what if the landlord opposes the application? I oppose it. And secondly, I wanted to bring up the parking issue again. There is some parking allocated to that building. However, in the year 2033, 10 years from today, all those rights go away. That's something to take into consideration too.
Thank you. Does the council have any further questions?
I do.
Councilor Ferrandi?
Thank you.
Okay, two statements.
If I were to come here and ask for a business license to operate right here, would you give it to me? I don't have a lease for these premises. They don't have it. What you heard from council was a misrepresentation. There's no lease. They don't have a right to be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ferrandi?
Thank you, Eva. I'm reading over the application, and the thing that, the seating capacity certainly, I never knew there was 306 seats in there. I guess there is. Can I finish my statement?
Please, if you don't, we're fine. We have the information we need. Thank you.
I'm just going by the application and what it says. And it says occupation is in accordance with fire code is 0. I just want to make sure the town is doing their diligence with the parking to make sure there is enough parking. I mean, I realize it's at the point of there was shared parking. Trio has some parking in there. The place has changed. The whole structure of the parking has changed. So I just want to know if the town's doing enough diligence as far as, making sure that the fire inspector knows how much parking is there. I don't know if it's a question for Mark, or, does the diligence have to be done for that also? And it kind of goes hand in hand. We're going to be,
I believe the town signed off on the property. I'm not aware of any, Janet, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not aware of any concerns that were raised by either the fire department or the building inspector. I'm not sure if Mike DeLuca was asked, weighed in, I wasn't privy to those conversations.
I'd rather see the town do their diligence before we go forward with this, especially since it's a legal situation that it's in now.
It's just about licensing. Counselor Kopech?
I don't even want to talk about parking, but what I would say is that we have a number of vendors in this town who don't have, independent parking. I could give you the Coast Guard House, I could give you the towers. There's a lot of places that there's not, defined parking for these places, and that doesn't seem to be an issue. So, sure, there's plenty of vendors in the area around the pier, but the fact of the matter is, so is the Coast Guard House and the towers. So I don't actually think this has anything to do with the issue at hand either. So I think we should just, take our vote, because I think parking would be something that we'd deal with at another time.
I agree.
Okay,
Council
so-
President, may I speak again, please? I actually do believe that this has respectfully an awful lot to do with this, because we're giving a license for a business that is telling us that they potentially might have more than 300 people in their facility, and we don't have adequate parking. We don't have Mr. DeLuca here tonight to talk about parking and his formula that he had given the town requiring a certain amount of parking. So I don't think that we can even vote on this tonight, because we just don't have the information that we need, as Mr. Ferrandi has said, to make the best decision for the town. We need more information. We just can't simply vote and say, okay, we'll find the parking wherever it might be. And I agree with Council Kopech. We have the Coast Guard House, we have the towers, and there's no defined, but they're not here tonight asking us for a license.
Because they already have one.
Because they already have them. So this one is a new one, and we need to take into consideration the parking for those two, as well as all the other small businesses in the area. So I really think that we need to hold off. Mr. DeLuca's not here. We need his input so we can make an intelligent decision for the town.
Thank you. So we I think did speak to, we do have our solicitor opinion. This motion's been on previously. We've discussed this. Again, like I've mentioned, this is just an agenda item for the license to just continue as it was. They're not requesting anything different. So, at this point, we've heard from the council members, and I think we can take a vote on the motion. So if it fails, it'll fail. But I think the consensus I've come to conclusion is that we do have support for this license. So it's a motion to approve victualling holiday, theater, and dance entertainment license applications for Narragansett Casino LLC, doing business as Narragansett Casino, 11 Pier Marketplace, Narragansett, Rhode Island, subject to local and state regulations.
I'll move the motion.
Second.
Well, we already had the first and
Oh, we
second.
did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
No.
Two. Okay, so motion by Counselor Lawler, seconded by Counselor Kopech. Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up for new business, for the fire department, we have a motion to approve the purchase of 8 laptops for Narragansett Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, for Zones LLC pursuant to the NCPA contract in the total amount of $10,784. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, seconded by Counselor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next up from the Public Works Department, we have a motion to approve the one-year contract extension for rental of tables, chairs, and tents with Pronzi Tents and Events for the towers at their quoted bid prices under the same terms and conditions as the original contract.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Motion by Counselor Lawler, seconded by Counselor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next up is from the Parks and Recreation Department. We have a motion to approve the 2023 Summer Concert Series with performances by 8 bands that exceed the $2,500 threshold, combined cost of $25,900.
I'll move the motion.
Second?
Second.
Deb's going to second it.
Okay.
No, you got it.
Sorry, I
All in
jumped out.
favor?
Aye.
Can I ask a
Aye, all
question?
opposed?
May I ask a quick question to the manager first?
I just one quick.
The money from this, Jim, this is there is a good amount of money from this that is a private donation, correct?
On this one, Michelle? On some of these events, they are from the other account, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Yes.
So this is not taxpayer dollar. This is a mix of, or what percent is it?
It would be a mix. I don't have the exact percent
Okay.
to offer you right now, but it is a mix. So we pull from our general contracted services budget and the other fund that's listed, and then the grant fund that's noted, or the trust fund, I'm sorry. So that's where we'll pull the balance from.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Michelle, is there any increase in this from last year?
Yes, sir. All of the bands went up this year.
Okay, how much percent do you know?
I would say between 10 and 15%, sir, per band.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anyone else from the council wishing to speak? Anyone from the public? Hearing none. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Motion by Councilor Cicilline Bonanno, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next up is a motion to approve the request from the South County Museum to host a Civil War reenactment at the South County Museum. This event is scheduled for Saturday, May 20th, and Sunday, May 21st, 2023, from 12 to 2 p.m. daily, subject to local and state regulations.
I'll move the motion.
Second.
Okay, I'm going to actually ask our town manager, Mr. Tierney, to give a few comments about this motion. I know we've had some emails and some calls from the residents living in the area surrounding there.
Thank you. I do, Miss Lynn Wagner is here from the museum, as is a resident of the HOA that had originally brought this to my attention. This is the second year that they've had this event at the South County Museum, and I did field a complaint from a resident who also met with their HOA and sent a letter to the council over the weekend that was provided to me today. I did speak with the complainant from the neighborhood, from the HOA, in my office, and we spoke at length about it. And then I met with Ms. Wagner, who is the director over at South County Museum. I discussed the complaint about last year, and Ms. Wagner told us how they would proceed with the porta-johns, how everything was set up. And I took a walk around the site with Ms. Wagner as we discussed it. I checked with the police chief prior to. We have 2 complaints since 2018 regarding noise at the South County Museum. One, we don't even know who the complainant was, not sure whether it was just an officer doing a routine community service check, which was in 2021, and then the complainant that met with me called in 2022 about loud noise that was bothering her dogs or upsetting the dogs. Those are the only complaints that the police department has on file for that. In addition to this, I spoke with the police chief about it, about the initial complaint, and going forward, if the event is approved, I have, in my conversation with Ms. Wagner, I have full confidence she's going to discuss it with the people who are planning on doing this reenactment to see what their standards of behavior are, and the police department will also just assist because of the crowd. We'll have someone check on it. But we didn't have any complaints. Some of the complaints that were articulated in the letter, we had no complaints filed with the police department relative to that.
Jim, can I ask
And-
a question?
Just 1 second. Please. And also the cannons going off, those would not be a violation of our town noise ordinance, just in and of themselves. It has to be for a prolonged period of time at a certain decibel level. I mean, it doesn't always even work with some of the clubs that we have in town.
Thank you. Council members, Councilor Cicilline Bonanno.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jim, does anybody sleep on the property that's involved in the reenactment of the Civil War? Are there anybody that's camping out, sleeping over? Is that happening?
It's my understanding they stay overnight there, some of the participants.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Any other council members?
Could we maybe hear from Ms. Wagner?
Oh, yes, Ms. White.
Hello, I'm Lynn Wagner, and I represent South County Museum. So just to answer your questions, we do have them sleep over. They arrive on Friday, and the camps are set up as they would be in the Civil War. It's not just about the reenactment. We really would like the participants and the people attending the Civil War reenactment to go into the camps and talk to these gentlemen and some of the people, the women that are dressed as civilians, and see what life was like in the Civil War back in the 1900s. So they do, and the tents that they use are from that time period, so it's really meant to really bring you back in time in history, and we really focus on that time period and what these gentlemen went through at such a young age. So the reenactment is a small portion of the entire weekend. It's about 45 minutes on Saturday and 45 minutes on Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Councilor Lauder?
I do. Lynn, don't go anywhere. Please stay up. I have a couple questions. Jim, for Councilor Cicilline Bonanno brings up a good point as far as the camping. Have correct permits been done for this year's event?
It's just the approval of the council, same thing as it was last year.
Okay.
And when I spoke with Ms. Wagner the other day, she was clearly passionate about it and professional in the discussion with me. She offered to speak with the complainant as well. And I told her that I would speak to the parties involved and then see where it goes from there, and encourage her as well as the complainant to come in and speak to the council if they wished.
Okay. From the one email that we received today from the I think he's the president of the association, he outlined a few things. And Ms. Wagner, I'm wondering if maybe we could just go through some of these items and clear some things up tonight so that maybe it might be more palatable for the neighborhood.
Sure, and I did meet with him last week, and this, again, was the first time I saw these complaints was today, so.
Okay. First, the bugle. I know I would not like being woken up at 6 o'clock in the morning to reveille. 7.
So I did say I would ask them to do this around later in the day, say at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Just to be more
So move that to
conscious.
9, that's, okay. The cannons, how often do the cannons go off?
I can't recall last year because that was our first one and there was a lot of the guns going off, but I will ask them only to fire the cannon during the reenactment.
During the reenactment?
So no, and I will also ask them not to fire their weapons unless it's in the reenactment. I know they do, when they get ready and they do their drills, I don't think they were firing their guns, but I'll be sure that they know not to unless it's during the reenactment.
Okay, so that would that 45-minute period of time?
Correct.
Okay,
One
perfect.
is at 12 o'clock on Saturday and 1 o'clock on Sunday.
Okay. The next complaint was about lights going into their homes. Can you help them out with
That's
that?
on a timer, and I told Mr. Cardy that we would adjust the timer, because I wasn't aware that it was on too late, but that's definitely on a timer, so that we can correct immediately.
Perfect. So that's another one off the list. As far as the truck on the property and the dumpster.
I mean, the dumpster's getting moved in May. We got
Okay.
that to get rid of yard waste, because the neighbors, apparently there were some trees that came down before my time, and they were still on the property, and the neighbors were concerned that it was an eyesore, and it really was, and it was a lot of brush behind the dumpster. So we had the dumpster brought in just to clean it up, clean the property up. And we've done a lot of cleanup on the property over the last 2 years, so this will probably be the last of it. But we may need that dumpster again next year for yard waste, just in the spring for our caretaker to clean up the 8 acres. The truck belongs to the caretaker. I can ask him to move it closer to his house, and it's kind of out of the way and stays out of the way of parking for other people that visit the museum, but that's something that
That would be
can
greatly
easily be resolved.
appreciated. The last and one that we seem to speak quite often of in this town is public urination. You have bathrooms at the museum.
We had 2 porta potties last year, and we kept the bathrooms in the visitor center open the entire time for the volunteers and for the reenactors. This year, we're not doing the porta potties because they got too full, and it was just not nice. So we're keeping the 4 bathrooms open, 2 in the Mets and 2 in the visitor center. So they'll have public restrooms to use, and I'll just remind the gentleman to please use the bathrooms.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I just make one just observation? And that is, as I recall, based on our conversation earlier today, that there is only one cannon.
There's only one,
Not
yeah.
cannons.
No, there's just one. It's yeah.
I actually suggested
wanted the
that they
big one,
turn it
but-
so that it goes out over to the,
Yeah,
out
and I
over
don't
the
know where
bed.
they,
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
the reenactment is in a different location this year, so I'm hoping that can help resolve some of it too.
Yeah.
It's
Farther
closer
down.
to the field in front of our carriage barn.
Great. Thank you for addressing your concerns. Counselor Ferrandi, did you have anything?
About
to
how
say?
many people do they actually sleep, in the field there?
About,
Or
that
wherever-
was the Union
tent-
camp.
tent camp out, yeah.
That was the Union camp over in that field, and there was probably about 12, 15 people.
That's all the people
And
that
that,
sleep
no,
out?
we have about 150,
That's-
up to 150 campers
That are
throughout the 8 acres, but in that particular field
Okay.
was the Union camp.
So 150, and you think you have adequate, bathroom facilities to cover that?
The 4, yeah,
But
yeah.
outside of an
They're
extra
public
porta
restrooms,
potty.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Counselor Cicilline Bono?
No, I just want to say thank you to you for working with the residents and clearing up the issues and compromising to make sure that we can do the reenactment, because I think it's a great thing. There's history. It's a great spot. So thank you for your work on that as well.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Mr. Wojciechowski?
Dan Wachowski, 1044 Boston Neck Road. I guess I'm becoming a little bit of a history crazy guy, and I really would like to see this. In fact, I'd like to see a couple of cannons. Boom, boom, boom.
So-
You're talking only 2 hours, 2 hours and 2
Yeah, you gotta
days.
fit it right
And you're
in.
not in the middle of the night. So it might have a better impact on those surrounding us to see what it is like to maybe be in a war of sorts. I did have tanks go off in my ears, and they gave me trouble. But I think the public got to be aware of that. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Let's see what history really was. And I want to thank you for doing that. Thank you both.
Can I make one other
Thank you.
comment?
Yes, Counselor Kopek?
I just wanted, this is a historical comment, and that is that this property was owned by Governor Sprague. Governor Sprague was actually the person who led the contingent from Rhode Island in the Civil War. He was in charge of them. He wanted to be a general. I don't think he ever quite got there, but that's, even though there was no Civil War battle here in Rhode Island, that property was his, and so, it was meaningful to him as well.
Thank you. Is anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Mary Wojciechowski? Mary?
Mary Wojciechowski, Narragansett. We've been to the Gettysburg reenactment, but because of that Russ movie, there's not going to be any live bullets, right?
No, no.
All blanks, okay. I don't need that.
No, we
Thank
don't
you.
need that.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Hames?
First of all, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful exercise. The other thing is talking about gun noise, just quickly. If you live along the river, February, well, it's over now. Then you get into the fall. We're awakened by, at 6 o'clock in the morning, maybe 100, 150 shotgun shots. every
Mr.
single
Hames, we're
morning.
sticking to the motion. The motion
it's
is...
about the noise.
No, it's not about the noise. This is about the motion to...
No, I'm just saying, we can
No,
put up
this
with
is,
the
we're
noise.
staying germane to the motion, which is to approve the request for the South County Museum to host a Civil War.
Approve it with the noise.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. This is, I'll just read the motion again. A motion to approve the request from South County Museum to host a Civil War reenactment at the South County Museum. This event is scheduled for Saturday, May 20th and Sunday, May 21st, 2023, from 12 to 2 p.m. daily, subject to state and local regulations. It was motioned by Councilor Cicilline Bonanno, seconded by Councilor Kopech. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next from the Engineering Department is a motion to award the bid for Scarborough Wastewater Treatment Facility groin restoration project to the lowest bidder, New England Building and Bridge Company, Incorporated, in the amount of $786,000.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone from the public? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next is a motion to approve, ratify, and confirm change order number 2 with E.W. Berman Incorporated for the Maury Luntgens Memorial Library renovation project in the amount of $21,415.
I'll move the motion.
Second.
Any discussion from the council? Anyone from the public? Mr. Wachakowski?
Stan Wachowski, 1044 Boston Neck Road. I guess I can't let this go. We just dealt with a change order last meeting, and always looking to minimize the change orders, or let's say have the contracts detailed enough where we minimize the change orders so there's fairness in the bidding and accomplishing the task. Is there, what specific reason was there a change order? Was there additional work? Was there existing work? Is there a major change here of sorts? And how many more are we going to have? I guess that's the biggest question. This is the beginning of numerous change orders, maybe? Does that mean we're not getting qualified documents in there that detail exactly that we do what we plan to do with the monies appropriated? Are we going to overspend by $500,000? I know it's only 25, but this is the beginning of the change order world. So I had to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak?
Eva, could I just?
Sure.
President, I'm not supposed to address the audience per se, I'll address the council. The change orders that were just mentioned by Stanley, there have been other change orders that the project, the owner's representative has recommended approval for that were credits as well. The owner's representative has been our project man is digging into it. They have found some change orders which have reduced the cost for the project and other change orders that have increased it. The council has kept appraised of all the change orders that are issued. Just in the interest of full transparency, they're approved so as not to slow the project down because they're within the process for approval. So they're approved immediately, but then they're brought before the council for approve, ratify, confirm out of full transparency. We did it with the Motorola contract years ago with the public safety building. So you'll see credits and extra expenses throughout the project. We do maintain a full list of the credits and debits through the whole project, which, if anyone would like to see it, we're glad to share it with them. We share it with the council at least every month. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Cicilline Bonanno, seconded by Councilor Kopech. Motion passes 5-0. Next is a motion to approve the contract for water and wastewater enterprise funds, financial analysis with New Gen Strategies and Solutions, LLC, in the amount of $43,800.
I'll move the motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Only that I
Council?
wish Mr. Vangermeer had stayed long
I
enough
know.
to see this particular motion, but
Okay.
otherwise, no.
Anyone from the public wishing to speak on this agenda item? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so this motion was motioned by Councilor Cecilian Bonanno, seconded by Councilor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0. Next up from the Town Council is a motion to determine next steps for short-term rental ordinance development.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, so this motion is coming back. Last meeting, we had a motion that we were talking about having, a third-party vendor. So this is a motion, it actually failed 2-2. So this is just moving this forward, bringing forward the discussion. If there's any other ideas out there or what the council wishes to move forward with, every time that we don't have an action plan, we're getting behind on where we should be with a short-term rental ordinance. And this actual agenda item comes from myself and Councilor Kopek, who we really want to move this forward in an expeditious manner. I know last council, so I did solicit information from third-party vendors, and there was one in particular where I did ask what the timeline. I think one of the issues is that we want to make sure that we get this done and we get it done right. And so the turnaround time for something like this, when I inquired, was because I was curious myself. And from start to finish for this to happen would be, normally would be 3 months. However, because we had already put together an ordinance, it would actually probably be more in the ballpark of 2 months. And the reason that it would take 2 months is because, we have to advertise, we have to publicly state that we're having public hearings. So that's where like the timeline increases. It's like you can't just really come up with this plan and have it completed. So there is resources available out there. They're available to just focus on this. So I'm just going to open that up to conversation. I know Councilor Kopek is on this agenda item with me too, so if she has any comments, I'll let her speak first on this.
I have a couple of comments. First of all, I want to just mention the fact that just by sort of sheer chance, I was approached by Granicus, which is an organization that has an incredible amount of experience in this area, and we have a contract with them for some of the work that we do here in Narragansett, and I invited Eva to join me at one of these. We had two conference calls, and one of the things that and we were just talking about short-term rentals, how the process works, how it works across the country. These are folks who deal with this as a main part of what their business is across the country in all kinds of communities, but they are particularly engaged in coastal communities as well. And some of the things they talked to us about were how to better structure the process to make this more, more communal, more engaging with everybody who might have a stake in the process of what short-term rentals means, because it can mean a lot of different things depending on the community that you have. And I was interested in them because I'd read an article that one of their folks wrote on this subject, and I thought it really clarified a lot of things. And I just wanted to mention that some of the specific things they told us about were just basically that we had to come up with an idea of how we frame our debate, how to identify what our ultimate goal is. There were other items that they also suggested to us in terms of creating a timeline to get this done. What were the best practices that other communities had already figured out. And so the whole thinking that I had about this was, I'm not a big fan of reinventing a wheel. I am a big fan of being as expedient as we can be and as frugal as we can be. So I was kind of disappointed in what transpired in the last meeting, just because this struck me as a really expedient way to get to the place where we want to be from the place that we are at this moment. So I just, I don't know what else makes sense to do, although if that doesn't work, one of the things that came up when we had our workshop was the idea of having an ad hoc committee made up of folks who have a vested interest in this across the broad spectrum of short-term rentals, and, have that committee make this determination. However, I sincerely doubt it could be done even in the 3-month period. So that's another point. So those are the things that I've been thinking about.
Councillor Waller?
Yeah, sure. Mark, is this a motion to reconsider, as stated by the council president? Because the motion failed.
No, it's not.
The motion that's before us is not a motion to reconsider. If somebody were to make a motion to hire an agency to study this and give, and help shepherd this through and give advice, then it would be a motion to reconsider, and that is not something that can come from Deb or Eva. But
Correct.
right now, I hear some redundant points, but it's nothing more than discussion, so.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we're good to discuss. Because I agree with Councilor Kopech, frugality and being expedient, those are the two most important things here. And, I could not be reached for comment by the press last week when they called to ask why I did not vote for it, and I'll allow, obviously, Steve to give his own explanation. But it was for those two reasons. We need to act now. We don't have the time to wait 2-3 months to have information compiled and have focus groups and have surveys done. And we don't there's no dollar amount attached to this. I understand the town manager and his staff has done a fantastic job in applying for a good amount of Main Street grants that could provide funding for this, and that would be terrific, but we don't know if that's going to occur. So without a dollar amount attached to this and without actually knowing how long the process this would be, I don't know if this would be the approach, although not, obviously this discussion is not on the motion, that I'd be in favor of taking. I would look at an alternative. I think that the councilors, Kopech and Eva, did a fantastic job last term and have really created an ordinance that we can work from. And I think we're at a state right now where we know, the council knows what we want. We need to do something for short-term rentals. We understand that the rental community, no matter what we do, it's not going to be right for them. They're going to want less regulation than we're going to want to put in. So I think we're at a point where we could take an ordinance, a good ordinance that needs to be maybe tweaked up a bit and put in the hands of an attorney such as DeSisto firm, which we hired in the past for the 4th student, who could then help us craft that ordinance going forward. That's how I would like to move.
Councilor Ferrandi, do you have any comments?
Thank you. Where I come from on this is I knew the ordinance was there, around from last October. And to me, and I didn't really realize that it was this particular ordinance that wants to be pushed forward. Are we going to, it seems like we're down the road a little bit with this. So if we get a company to do it, do we need everything they have, take us from infancy to beginning? I think we have a good framework of what Eva and Deb did, and I thank you for it. And I know you guys have been working on it a long time. So I think there might have been a little miscommunication of as far as what was actually going to be forwarded. Was it the ordinance exactly? Or were we going to, hire this company to just take it from A to Z and what the cost was? So I think this is a good framework of what we have. And Jill Stadler is right. I mean, the people that are renting the property want to proliferate the short-term rentals and whatnot. They're not going to be happy with any changes. So I think you're still going to have a little bit of divisiveness. You're going to have to talk it out at a public hearing, obviously. But I think maybe getting some, it's pretty close to where it is. I mean, it's occupancy, it's the length of time. If it's 7 days, it could be more than that. There's not a whole lot more to do outside of having someone, maybe someone locally, maybe Mr. DeSisto. He did a pretty good job on the foreign related so far. But I don't know if we need a full-blown, complete Granicus group or whatever this is to shepherd the whole thing in through. I realize, they have some good resources maybe after it's done to kind of monitor it for us or maybe give us some pitfalls once we have it pretty much where we want it. But just to give them this whole thing and say, okay, here, now we need this passed, I think, we're not being honest with ourselves if we don't put ourselves in this. We're going to have to sit at the public hearings anyway. We're not, this other group isn't going to do all the work for us. But that's my take. Maybe we don't use the whole portion of that.
Thank you. They do like surveys and other things. There's a whole package that they would provide us with. Councilor Cicilline Milano, do you have any comments?
I was at the workshop, and I'll thank you both, but I think it was far from perfect, not ready to go. Matter of fact, there were a lot of comments about, where did we get the ordinance? It came from California. There was some cut and paste. And so, well-intended, but far from ready to go. And I know people want action right now, but I don't think what we have in front of us is ready to go. And I mean, I wasn't here. The motion that we were going to have a consultant failed, so that would have been a really great idea. So I don't know what the next best idea, but I don't think what's in front of us now in a draft is good to go.
Is anyone from the public wishing to comment? Mr. Wojciechowski.
Stan Wojciechowski, 1044 Boston Neck Road. Just for your information, I was specifically asked by that rental organization not to speak for them. Just to let you know that. I speak here for liberty and justice for all, not for any organization. I think, Councilman Ferrandi, I think you hit the nose with the parking and noise. That's the goal. We're looking for a goal. What's the problem? Parking and noise. And how do we address that? We certainly don't address that by attacking landlords or any other property owner. I think, like I say, I try to mention cost recovery, get the fines so the police officers can cause these people to stop, cause the drunks to not go out there and make noise, cause them not to park on somebody else's lawn. That's what's happening. And just be honest. I don't park on somebody else's lawn and make a lot of noise unless I'd be drunk. And I say 90% of the time, that's the problem. So that's what we need. We need police officers out there, and I don't want to pay for 1 million police officers to go out there, so I want cost recovery. Every time they go out there, I want our municipal judge to charge each person an extra $1,000 for that citation. That's what I want to do. Number two, with all due respect, I think you're dealing with real estate. Government now is going to be a realtor. I know you are, and you're very good, and you probably give them all the answers they need and do it right. I know that. But I just don't want, if you're not there, the people sitting there are not realtors, they're not rental agents. We've only been doing it for about 50 years, and we still make mistakes. And it's not easy for government to deal with tenants, and most of the time, again, the tenant is a drunk, understand? And now it's moved to marijuana. So it's moved to drugs. So it's booze and drugs that causes the noise. I've got him, the nicest guy in the world, all of a sudden, doggone, marijuana smell. Stinking building's got marijuana smell. Can I evict him based on marijuana smell? Mel, is that against the law to have a marijuana smell in an apartment? So next door can't take it? I mean, we're in for a lot of trouble. And for you to be involved in try to deal with rental, deal with the cost recovery, deal with criminals who break the law, either through noise, trespassing, whatever they do. Whenever a criminal, that's where you show up. You don't show up ahead of time to destroy my liberty and justice as I'm trying to accomplish my mission. And what about the 80% of the landlords, supposedly the landlords, who are very good at this? And now they're at your mercy for costs and violation of their rights. So I consider following Councilman Ferranti's idea, deal with the noise, deal with the criminals, get off the real estate issue.
Thank you, Mr. Wojciechowski. Anyone else? Mr. Lynch?
Thank you.
Dennis Lynch, 22 Central Street. So I was here at the last meeting, and we were sort of stuck in the same sand in terms of everyone, to one degree or another, wanting to implement rules in place. How do you light the match? How do you get it started? So, and I was also here for the public hearing with the straw man that the two councilwomen brought in. And that may have been overly ambitious in terms of the specificity of it. I think there were so many, elements of it, from the top down to the, nuts and bolts of the enforcement, that maybe it can be broken into pieces. There's, like Steve says, there's really, the two foundational pieces are, how long can you rent? What's the shortest amount of time you can rent? And how many people get to be in that domicile? Those are the two major building blocks of everything. And if you could start to get some consensus around that, I think that assigning it to the professionals and the staff, through the town manager, through the building inspector, they can bring you a working draft and a working model. And maybe the consultants and the professionals are more on the back end in terms of giving you sort of information as to if this is mainstream, if the things that you're choosing are the middle of the road versus something far out. But the machinery could start by you creating that assignment for town staff, which I think is what happened last time around. And again, we're not on the bleeding edge here. If you Google Newport short-term rental, up pops the whole web page for Newport short-term rentals, and there's a short-term rental officer there. And when you read that through, although we're not identical to Newport, we are a coastal tourist town. When you read that through, one of the things that's important is it shifts all of the onus to the people that want to make the investment and want to earn the money. Everything that the landlord or the owner has to do to comply, in terms of inspections and fire regulations and all those things that you can choose to have or not to have. But, and I know in speaking to Wayne last week, he's very conversant with what a number of other communities are doing. So I think you have a lot of the pieces, but it's really put it on the agenda for May, start driving towards a date for that, and it won't be perfect the first time, and the residents won't agree with the landlords and the out-of-state owners, but it can start driving towards a consensus and someplace that we can actually put into. And of course, the hardest thing here is going to be the enforcement and implementation. That's going to be where the rubber hits the road, which we found out with all of our ordinances related to housing. So what have I said? I've said, please go forward with pace. Please start an executional process, and perhaps it starts with town staff and an assignment, and a consultant and professional and their data can be wound in as you go. And legal resources, Jill points out, is incredibly important too, to make sure that we're bulletproof. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zanfrillo.
Paul Zanfrillo, 7 Women's Circle. Could not agree with Dennis more. Perfect is the enemy of done. Just want to talk about a sense of urgency. If you go on Airbnb right now, you can already book something for 1 year from now, which I was kind of surprised to see, because usually it's like 6 months or something like that. And Granicus Group, I did a little research on them. The partnership we have with them, potentially, right? They're using artificial intelligence and a lot of cool stuff to get the enforcement done. So they're definitely, a company like that should be definitely part of the partnership that we do. But time is of the essence, and we're down the road. We should go, and I would suggest that, to talk about ad hoc committees and surveys, and, I watched a webinar that the Granicus Group had put together, and they had a lot of different municipalities on it. It's really good. If you haven't seen it, it's on their website. And they did a survey at the beginning, and they asked how many, what stage people were in. And some people were in very early stages, because they thought there would be tremendous resistance in their communities. And of course, the Granicus group sells software to manage them. So without an ordinance, they're not going to get the software. So it makes perfect sense that that would be part of their service offerings, that they would make sure as a pre-sales activity that they offer this package and consulting, so then they could then sell the software, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good business practice, right? So in that survey, different people are at different stages. So I would imagine, of course, they'd have a package. If someone was introducing this for the very first time, their first rodeo, I mean, it's like Rocky 11. We've been through this so many times, right? I mean, we know what the movie's going to look like. Nothing, I mean, if you go look and listen to those hearings over what, 5 years, it's all the same. I mean, it's all the same. That's why 4 of you got voted in, right? Because the people support you guys moving forward as quickly as possible. Put the right combination. I think Dennis has the great idea. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else from the public? Any final thoughts from the council? Consensus? All right, okay. So this motion is to determine next steps. So we've discussed different options. So now we just need to determine which way to move forward. So with this being the case, there needs to be a motion made to take action. So any council member who wants to make that motion and may do so. Does anyone?
I think I'd like to make a motion to, we heard what we heard tonight, okay? Let's think about it a little bit and get to the point where, if it's a combination of Granicus or someone else, we can do that. Or we can hire Mr. DeSisto. I don't feel comfortable about going forward with anything tonight. I mean,
So we have to have an actionable motion to refer something, motion to.
Continue.
If we continue it, that's like another 2-week delay.
What's that?
Well, it's just we're not coming to an agreement with it ever. So I would like to understand how much of the grant, it sounds like this group could possibly have some great resources. We don't know how much money it's going to cost. We don't know if it's 2 months. We don't know. I would like to understand how much it could cost, because if it's going to be something that can help us with this ordinance, I'll be for it. But I just don't know what the price is, and I don't know how long it will take.
Are you talking about the cost for a third-party vendor, or are you talking about the cost for legal, or I'm just curious?
Well, we know the cost for legal, if we go with the DeSisto, is $125 an hour. So
I'm not sure about that.
Hours. It was the cities and town negotiated rate, I believe. But if there's...
But we don't know the number of hours.
We don't know the number of hours, but if we can find out if this consultant group can, I agree with Steve, we don't need to have them create something, we have something. So if they can be involved at a process maybe further along than they traditionally start at, so we don't need them from the beginning. If we can take them and move them to the middle of a process where we currently are at and provide them with our ordinance and maybe have them help us at that point, I'd like to know what that would look like and how much money that would be. And that might be something that we can all agree upon working through.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I
And
mean,
then also then get DeSisto involved as well on that.
So the only thing that I would say about that is that I think if I remember, the motion 2 weeks ago was to put out an RFP, which is how we would find out how much it would cost. And so and because I don't think we can just say, go with Granicus. And, I've only used them as an example because they were somebody that I talked to and had read about. But that doesn't mean they're the only people out there. What I like about them is that they do know a little bit about us and they do know what we've done so far. But the fact of the matter is that I don't know how you can get the answer to that without the RFP.
Correct. So the other, I think, thinking back, if that motion just didn't have third-party vendor, if it was just like a third party, that would have included, all the actions that maybe DeSisto were outsourcing it to another law firm. So that's I think it just got tied up with that. Like the RFP would be perhaps maybe even putting it out to bid to, I don't know, figure out how many hours it would take from a law firm. I mean, is that where you're going with it as well?
Yeah, I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out what that would be, because if the cost for this study would be, let's just say number $20,000, and if we go ahead and say, okay, that would be that approach, $20,000, RFP, that scares me though, Deb, because that's time consuming. So I'm sure we can have a dialogue with them and find out if they've ever done this before, and to start at a point further along than the initial starting point. What would that fee look like? And then also, as far as Del Sesto, if we can find out his negotiated rate, I believe it's between 125 and 150. That's if you say you use the same number of $20,000, it's something like 72 hours of billing right there that we could, I mean, hours of legal work that we could have for the same price. So I think we just need to know what that is. But I would be interested in finding out if we could start them later on in the ordinance, start them at a point not from the initial. Provide them with the ordinance that you two created, and find out what their fee could be to help us with that process.
Okay, so would we like to just continue this to date certain? The same maybe determine, or do you want, there needs to be, like, we're trying to determine the next steps. So is that just coming back to the council with numbers, or I mean, again, we had the numbers from, Granicus.
But that's from them starting from bolts to nut, from starting from initial. That's not from them giving you your motion, correct?
No, they have.
I'm sorry, for,
Ask that question again.
okay, so what was the question? I'm sorry.
So the dollar amount that we have that was on the last agenda, was that from conception? Or is that giving you the ordinance that you guys created?
That was just for everything, for all the work that they would do to get an ordinance
So
in
it would be
place.
from scratch.
It wouldn't be from scratch. It would be, we'd provide them with the ordinance that we've worked on. So that's why it would take less time to go from, point A to point B. Because what I was saying is, when I did ask them, it was like 3 months if they started from scratch. So they're not starting from scratch. They're basically starting from what the ordinance that Deb and I submitted, Councilor Kopek and I submitted when we were prior to the meetings that we had. So just, so again, we're trying to determine next steps. So there has to be an actual, we can continue it, we can motion to, I don't know, we're just, because we're discussing.
I mean, there was never really a cost for what the work that we wanted to look for last time, so maybe we can compare that with what, a local attorney, the Sisto Law or someone like that to kind of work on it with us.
So you're saying continue in order for us to ascertain what the potential fee would be for both processes? Yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, so somebody needs to make that motion.
Motion to continue so that we can ascertain the fee structure would be for DeSesto Law Firm, as well as, I'm pronouncing the word wrong.
Granicus.
DeGranicus.
My husband thinks it's a monster.
Mr. Davis, does that sound correct to you? That's not.
That's certainly one direction. Who is going to ascertain that information?
So that's the, motion to direct town manager was how the motion was worded last time. So it's maybe just, it'd be a similar motion where it'd be like, it's a third party. It's not us doing it. So it's like, it's not our staff. So it is a motion to direct the town manager, and I'm just saying somebody's going to make this motion, not me, to solicit
So sure, so
quotes
the motion to
from-
direct the town manager to speak to both of these vendors.
or just solicit quotes from vendors. So, okay. Does that make sense? Mr.
Yeah, I
Chair?
think that to solicit quotes, including but not limited to DeSisto Law Firm.
Yeah.
Candidates.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
good.
and that gives us a kind of like a.
It'll give us the information we need. so we
The
can-
information we need to make the decision, and not saying that we're not going to continue working on it. So we
Good.
will. Okay, so the motion on the table is a motion to direct the town manager to solicit quotes from third parties for development of short-term rental ordinances. So that was the motion by.
That was the original motion?
No, that's like, we have to determine, so we're making the motion to.
But we're going to mention two specific people, to Granicus and also DeSisto Law Firm.
DeSisto Law, yeah.
Okay, specific, okay. Okay, that's
So,
okay.
I believe what Mark said was including.
Including, yeah, including.
DeSisto.
Okay.
Law.
Okay.
Not limited to.
Okay, including, not limited to DeSisto, okay. So that, I'm going to say that's a motion by Councilor Lawler. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, so motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Ferrandi. Motion passes 5-0. Do I need to go? Ms. Taro, do I need to go back to the original motion as amended, or is that fine? It's fine? It's fine, okay. Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next Town Council agenda item is a motion to adopt the proposed amendments of the Town of Narragansett rules for commission, committee, and board appointments to amend the role of council members on committees and remove the date October 4th, 2021, in reference to term limits to be in line with the intent of the referendum that passed November 6th, 2012.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. So this motion is coming from me. I was on the council last term where there was a referendum that had passed for term limits, and that was back in 2012. And then at the time, on October 4th, the last council put a date in there so that all council terms would really be counted going from that date forward. When I was on the council, I didn't think that that was the correct way to go, and I just thought it was in conflict with the intent of the referendum. You know, I know the language hasn't been codified since the passage in 2012, but the referendum that was passed is clear. That term limits are to be limited to 2 terms to be effected upon the passage by the voters, and not that arbitrary date, like some 9 years after that the referendum was passed. And so the impact of this decision is that many individuals that would have termed out were appointed and will have the opportunity to be appointed for an additional term. And this change will not impact any previous appointments for terms currently being served. It will only affect any future appointments. And this motion is also that, additionally, that the October 4th, 2021 council meeting language that council member could not serve as chair was added to the rules. It is proposed that this language be amended to serve as an officer, since the role of the council on committees is to serve as liaisons. So do I have any discussion from the council?
I have several things to say.
Okay, Councilor Kopek.
Couple of things. First, what you said before, I'm not sure was actually correct. When we decided to make the change in October 2021, anybody who was in a term at that time, that was considered their first term. So when that term ended, they had access to a second term. They didn't get a brand new first term. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And I wanted to, like I said, I have quite a few things to say. And so I'm just going to read a couple of things. So today we have 23 entities created by state law, town ordinance, and town council with a wide array of requirements and rules. I think that our prior council went a very long way to correct not only the lack of attention to the referendum, but also to organize this program in a more streamlined way, including authorizing the use of an electronic database to track activity, creating requirements for memberships on boards and committees, and even creating a spreadsheet to identify the history of each organization. But there are issues requiring additional work, including ensuring that all boards and committees have staggered terms and finding a better way to attract individuals to serve. Of the 23 entities, 2 were created and 2 resurrected, whose members, by the last council, whose members were appointed after the decision to allow members to have 1 additional term beyond their current one. These 4 entities are already subject to the 2-term limit. But many of the other and also have staggered terms, which is very helpful. But many of the other committees and boards would be decimated by this change in policy by wreaking havoc on current outstanding issues, as well as losing incredibly important expertise without ensuring that a succession plan is in place to ensure smooth transition to new leadership. This is especially important for the Library Board of Trustees, the Planning Board and the Zoning Board, and to a lesser extent the Conservation Commission, Land Trust Conservancy, and the Recreation Advisory Board, and the Towers Committee, among others. So just to give you a couple of examples, I won't read the 7 that I have here, but for example, the Conservation Board, of the 7 members, 1 is currently vacant, 4 expire on the same day in 2025. I don't know why they weren't staggered last year, but they weren't. And 1 expires at the end of this month. Sadly, 1 member, who we acknowledged this very day, passed away this past week, and the expiration of that term also impacts the Coastal Access Committee. Okay, so the Planning Board is actually a very good example of what we should be aiming for in terms of staggered terms. While I recognize that Terry Fleming has been on the board and the chair for a very long time, along with the chair of the zoning, this is the most important board I think we need to work with. 3 of the 5 members were appointed in the past 2 years, and based on my experiences at planning board meetings, the depth of knowledge required, the amount of work associated with this board, we need to be absolutely certain that a continuity plan is in place, and I have a recommendation about that in a second. Towers Committee is probably the scariest one of all. Currently, there are no staggered terms. All 4 members currently appointed are expired right now. In addition, 2 of the ancillary seats from the Historical Society and the Friends of the Towers are vacant, and 1 of the others expires in August and the last the following year, losing all current expertise nearly simultaneously. I think we do need to maybe take a look at this committee for some revisions, but that's a different issue. There's also staggering on the Zoning and Planning Board as well, but there's some situations with alternatives, and alternatives for the Planning and Zoning Boards particularly are appointed annually, and if those positions can only be for 2 terms, a great deal of newly learned expertise would be lost without anybody having really had too much opportunity to serve. So my suggestion is to delay this action. In the meantime, several steps can be taken to ensure that whatever our final methodology turns out to be, we will not be in a position to leave a board or committee in chaos, nor will we add significant burden to the town council or the town clerk's office. So I would recommend the following. Schedule a work session with board and committee chairs so they can provide the council with a succession plan of action. Consider extending all second terms as defined by the current rules in a staggered way across 3 years in order to ensure that all boards and committees have staggered term endings, which is not the case today. There's a problem with planning and zoning about that, but I'll get to that in a second. Add a section to the rules that allows alternates to serve 2 full terms after their alternate time has ended. Revise the rules by changing the requirement to sit out a term before applying to return and change it to 1 or 2 years rather than a full term. Revise the rules to allow anyone who completed an existing term due to a member's leaving, resigning, or passes away to be allowed 2 full terms. As noted above, my hope is that this motion will be continued until such time as we have heard from the chairs of the boards and committees regarding their succession plans and provide the council time to take them into consideration. This would also give us time to make decisions about the bullet points above. The results would allow us to make a sound decision that honors the referendum without creating a potentially chaotic situation.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to get feedback or input from our town solicitor, Mr. Davis. I know, I've discussed this with you before, so I think it's good to be able to hear your viewpoint on this on this agenda item. If you could just please comment.
I've commented on this in the past. My opinion hasn't changed. I think Councilwoman Kopech brings up some very good points, some very good suggestions, and some challenges. However, from a legal standpoint, the voters approved this referendum in 2012. it limited terms to 2 terms. And this is why when we talk about voter initiatives and referendums, it's so important that they be well thought out and people explore the unintended consequences. Because this referendum didn't have this safety language in it when it probably should have. But it didn't, and the voters approved it. It should have been in effect once the vote was certified. The fact that it was missed, the fact that it wasn't codified, notwithstanding, the minute we discovered that it hadn't been followed, it should have been enacted. And so my legal opinion is the town council, I think what the town council did, in my opinion, was illegal. I think the vote stands in 2012. You became aware of it, and you're stuck with the 2-term limit. That's my legal opinion.
So, Mark, can I?
Sorry, Councilor Cicely Bonanno?
So, Mark, if we would have passed this tonight, would that mean that people would be off the boards immediately?
Okay, so
Because that would
if you
be
follow the letter of
chaos.
the law, yes, but I think you would have an argument, a prudent argument that that would be true chaos. So the town council acting in a prudent fashion would enact this so that, again, in my opinion, you can justify, I don't think removing people at this point is good in any manner. Legally, you might have a precedent for it, but I think it sets a dangerous course of action for the town. So, strictly speaking, Councilwoman Bonanno, I do believe one can interpret it that way. I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that as people's terms come up, you look and had they served 2 terms since 2012 or more, then they would be termed out.
Yeah, just to clarify, in this agenda item, the summary states that the change will not impact any previous appointments for terms currently being served. It will only affect any future appointments. Any other council members? Councilor Lawler?
So I was in the audience the night that this passed by the previous council, and I applaud Eva for not voting for it, because I do agree with the opinion of the solicitor that the town voted on the 6th of November in 2012 for term limits, and unfortunately, that council, it's our former town solicitor, and Ms. Bonanno, they didn't codify it. Not putting fault to them, it just didn't happen at that point in time. And so why would any other council after that look to see if it was codified? You just wouldn't look for it. So when the last council did unfind this, I think probably because there were some appointments that were coming up that they wanted to make sure occurred, they went ahead and codified it. So I agree with this motion. I agree that we don't need to go back and displace people who have been now serving too many terms. But when we have individuals who've been serving on the same committee since 1996, that's just not correct. It's not what the town voted for. So I agree with Eva's motion.
Okay, so can I make a comment?
Sorry, Councilor Ferrandi has not spoken yet.
I think, what the last council did maybe was an attempt to kind of correct something without going back to
There's no
exactly
finding
what the
about it.
letter of the law was, say, in 2012. Now, that was passed, so we did give a number of people some second terms or third terms or whatever it would be. But at this point, I think it's time to kind of get it straight now, so as people term out, we don't throw anyone off the board or anything, but as people term out, we replace them with new candidates.
Well,
And
just for the
eventually, it'll
record-
get up to the speed where we were, the longer we get down the road, I think it'll work out.
Okay, so as of today, there are 4 members of the Towers Committee that have expired. As of actually October 1st of 2022, fully expired, 4 of them. There's only 5. And it includes the chair, who's been there for a very, very long time, I might add. So good luck with that.
No, just to clarify, I'm not sure, so I mean, these are advisory committees, I mean, our town's resilient, these committees can be resilient, we can take action plan accordingly. This is just making a right, this is like the will of the people on that referendum. What I'm saying is, like, a lot of times too, when we have, I think if there's no other people that are applying for these boards, and I'm not sure, you know, if there's like a second term and then nobody else is applying, I'm not sure, like, how do you really, I mean, anyway, we'll cross that bridge and we'll figure it out.
We have to cross it today.
Right, no, we have to just figure it out. We just have to, again, when we were discussing this the last council, I mean, I did solicit opinions from other legal counsel.
We all did that. We all did.
But I ended up, the only outlier was what we were discussing last time where it was said that it was okay for the council to put a random date in 9 years after a referendum passed. And to me, that still does not make sense.
Because no one had touched it for 10 years.
Yeah, but it was still, as our town solicitors stated, it was pretty much once it passes, that's when it becomes the law. Once it's
Well, I mean, it passed in 2011 and it did not become the law. I want to clarify this really, I want to make this very clear. It did not pass. I was in shock when I realized that this was even, that this whole thing that the referendum had even happened and nothing had happened in 10 years. I think what we tried to do was come up with the fairest and most expedient way to do what we needed to do and keep the boards and commissions still functioning. And some of them are some of the most important things that happen in this town. And I just think this is, I thought that what we did was a really, really smart way of dealing with things. And I would also point out that after it was done in October of 2021, I don't know about you, but I didn't hear one person, not one person, come forward and have a problem with it. So, to me, and I recognize that the law is the law, and I recognize that once you identify that the law doesn't work right, I mean, every single one of you have said, the law is the law, you have to make this happen, but we don't necessarily have to make it happen right this second, because if we make it happen right this second, the Towers Committee falls apart. So, I mean, I don't really, I do get the idea that some people have been on committees for a very long time and probably shouldn't be, but we didn't make that problem. We just tried to solve it. And so to my mind, unless we fix some of these other things first, I mean, if you want the chaos, that's what you're going to get. And if you want to do all these other things that we're talking about doing as a council over this entire term, we're going to be spending half of our time dealing with getting committees and boards, in the right shape. And I mean, if that's what we want to do, if that's what the majority of the council wants to do, I mean, okay, we can do that, but I just think that it's not going to turn out to be, it's not going to be easy, and it's going to eat up a lot of time, and it's going to be a lot of time not just for us, but also for the town clerk.
Council President, I think the one thing here, and I can understand the passion, and I appreciate the fact that Deb was on the council that tried to fix it, but unfortunately, it wasn't up to them to fix. The voters had voted in 2012, and to come up with...
Then why didn't you fix it?
Excuse me. To come up to, in 2012, and to arbitrarily pick the date of October 4th, 2021 to make the change just wasn't, and we heard it from our solicitor tonight, wasn't a legal thing to do. And as far as boards and commissions, and by adding 3 more boards, we've also increased the amount of headcount, and it doesn't seem that we have enough citizens who want to serve on our board. So maybe we need to take a look at the amount of boards and commissions. I know, Deb, you and I have had to talk about the Coastal Access Committee, and there's overlap with the Parks and Recreation Department and their committee. There is.
There is not.
Excuse me, Deb, I'm speaking right now.
Well,
excuse me.
Then don't.
I don't speak over you.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to...
Don't speak over you. Don't. But so they had made recommendations about the town beach, and we just don't need to have 2 committees talking about the same subject matter. It's just not productive. So I think that we should probably take a look at also at the boards and commissions when we go forward on this.
Okay. Any other comments? Any comments from the public? We've kind of gone around, like, will anyone from the public wishing to speak on this? Okay, I think we've already discussed this.
I would like to speak just one more
All right.
time.
Counselor Cicely Bonanno.
So, sorry, I had to step out for a minute, but the last council corrected it. Deb, Jesse, and I, we made it right. That was the legal opinion then. I'm not surprised at what's happening tonight. I'm disappointed. I think it's going to be chaotic. The intent was to term limit, and that's what we did, and we worked towards that. Tonight's motion in front of us is going to be chaotic, and I strongly oppose it. I think it's a bad direction. As Deb said, we got an unfinished bike path, a library to build, a budget to go through. There's just so many things, and this is going to create all this havoc and confusion to the public. It's a bad motion, and I'm voting against it.
Thank you. It's just creating, it's actually correcting what should have been done, and it's wrong, and it's legally, it makes, I don't know, like, to me, it makes sense that, you know, once the voters voted, that's what they meant. They did not mean for it to be years down the road. So, that's, we've kind of discussed this, so I'm going to just call this to a vote. All in favor?
I had another
Aye.
comment to make. I wanted to make another comment.
Okay, Counselor
Thank
Kopech.
you. I'm just addressing something that Jill addressed. I want to just make the point that the Coastal Access Committee has a completely different reason for a living than the Rec Advisory Board does. And in fact, if you read the requirements of the Recreation Advisory Board, there's absolutely no comment in there about the beach. None.
Thank you.
Zero.
All right. So this motion is not about what the
Yes, it
direction is. It's so I just wanted to circle back and then just bring it back to what it's to adopt the proposed amendments. And so I'm going to take a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed to?
Absolutely not.
Nay.
All opposed, nay. So motion passes 3-2. It was motioned by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Ferrandi. Next from the town clerk is a motion to reappoint Melissa Crawford as Democrat alternate member and David Matrillo as Republican alternate member to the Board of Canvassers for 2-year terms expiring March 1st, 2025.
So moved.
Do you have a second? Any discussion? Anyone from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion by Councilor Lawler, second by Councilor Cicely Bonanno. Motion passes 5-0. Lastly is a motion to reappoint 3 individuals, 2 members and 1 planning board representative to the Coastal Access Improvement Committee.
I have a nomination.
No, it's word.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So we have nominations. Do you have we'll discuss nominations.
Do we want to just get the planning board one out of the way? Because that's the representative from the planning board is supposed to be, was voted on in the planning board session, the last planning board session. It was Mark Brady was the individual.
Okay. Any other nominations for, well, actually, the planning board, they voted for him. So do I have a...
I'll second that. Is that a motion, Deb?
Do we need a motion
Well, I
for
don't
that?
think we
Do we need a motion? For the
Okay, all
planning
in-
board representative?
I think they voted to appoint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Worthap.
Okay. So,
Still have to vote.
do we?
We still have to vote to
So are
appoint.
you doing them individually? I think what Councilor Kopech was saying was that she wanted to make the motion to appoint the planning board representative.
Correct.
Right.
So we have to vote on that.
Okay, so that's fine.
So there's a motion on the table
Yeah, so moved.
by Councilor Kopech, seconded by Councilor Cicely Bonanno. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Okay, so do I have any nominations for,
I'd like to nominate the reappointment of Senator Kara.
anyone, any other nominations? Any seconds?
Well, wait, so, and I would like to nominate Jesse Pugh.
Well,
no,
this is
we're-
for
we're-
a reappointment.
So I'll second your motion.
Right, that's a reappointment.
Okay,
For who,
so,
Cynthia?
Yes.
Is it for Cynthia?
yeah, so.
It's reappointment, right?
Yeah, so this is for reappointment. If we have a motion to reappoint Cynthia Zakara Martin, it was a motion by Councilor Kopech, second by Councilor Cicely Bonanno. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a vacant position. I'll take nominations at this point.
I'd like to nominate Jesse Pugh for the seat on Coastal Access.
Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Jennifer Gibson.
I didn't hear the name.
Jennifer Gibson.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, Councilor Cicely Bonanno, would you like to
Yes,
speak
so
about?
I'll start with Jesse Pugh. He's a full-time resident in the town of Narragansett. He has 4 years of experience serving on the Narragansett Town Council. He served as the Coastal Access Representative. He has extensive knowledge about the community and planning, local zoning, and parking ordinances. He has an awareness of the coastal access in the local municipalities. He's a web designer by trade. I think he's actually the one that formed the coastal access, and I think he would just be added value, and I think he should have the opportunity to serve on that committee.
All right, Council Lawler, your nominee.
My nominee is Jennifer Gibson. She's been a long time summer resident, and she is one of the people that in 2020 became a full-time Narragansett resident. She and her family moved here from New York. She has 2 children that are in our school system. She lives in the avenues, and on one of the roads that we have been speaking about, the last council spoke about for a tremendous amount of time. And I believe that having someone from the neighborhood in the avenues who is a full-time resident, who has a graduate degree in urban planning, who is a coastal advocate, but also a member of community that there's been a lot of issues with parking and with just overall usage issues, would provide some balance to the committee that I think is very much needed.
Okay, and discussion on candidates. So I'll start with Councilor Kopech.
They're both great choices, I have to be honest with you. Jennifer, I think her first, when she gave us her first application, she was just moving into town. I had a conversation with her at the time, actually a couple of conversations, so she's very good. I mean, if it was possible to have both of them, that would be fantastic, but I think Jesse has, a lot of experience with what transpires as far as coastal access is concerned, and I think he has a great deal of expertise that would be very useful to that committee. So I would have to say Jesse, it would be my first choice, but I wish we had 2 positions.
Councilor Ferranzi.
Yeah, I think Jennifer would be my pick. She's been a full move down here. She's kind of in that area where there is some controversy now, so it'd be maybe good to have someone in there. And she's a coastal advocate, so that would be my pick.
Okay, I think, I also think there are 2 good choices. Obviously, Mr. Pugh is the one that wanted to start this. I don't really know Jennifer, but she sounds like she's an advocate for, excuse me, for access, and I think, to me, it would be a great opportunity for somebody new to come in and try to have a board. And again, if there's any, I'm sure there'll be other opportunities. So I could go either way on this one.
So who are you saying?
To me, it's either, just like Deb, Councilor Kopech. So we just need to make a motion, and we will vote on the motion.
Deb, did you not, did you decide on a
Jacob.
candidate?
Jesse was
Yes,
my
so it's
candidate, yeah.
Jesse, and you both said the other candidate, so Ever, I think you're the split on that.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't
know,
matter, you can't.
Take a vote.
We are going to have, I mean, as sad as this is, we do have a vacancy on the
I believe he's an appointee from the Conservation
It is
Committee. I think just like the Planning Board, they appoint from the Conservation.
right. But I mean, we need a Conservation Committee person, so
So,
that's my point.
so
You might be able to get both of them that way on coastal access. But, I mean, I guess that's just speculation. So I guess we first go with Jesse, right? Because he was nominated first to take a vote. Is that what we got to do?
somebody needs to
So
make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Jesse Pugh to the Coastal Access Committee.
And I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
All opposed?
No.
No. Okay, motion passes 3-2 to appoint Jesse Pugh. Motion by Counselor Kopek, second by Counselor Sisseling Bonanno. Next up is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All
Aye.
opposed?
Go UConn.
Yeah. Motion by Counselor Lawler, second by Counselor Kopek. Motion passes 5-0.